come get your fix with part 6 of The Gods of Eden. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
Get your fix. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed, high atop the Edwards Plateau. The Watcher is en route, he says. So he might be joining us on the slide during this segment, or maybe next segment. We'll have him in here. We're going to be
fired.
Yeah, he's fired. So thanks to everyone for the well wishes from last episode. I did get well very quickly. Basically, the next day I was much better, and the day after that it was completely gone. So I appreciate everybody who told me to get well on the YouTubes and in the comments on the website.
Except for that one guy. He's hoping you had the Rona.
Yeah. Yeah, there were some people that were like, I hope you die, Russ.
Wow.
Nobody said that.
Okay. Like shit.
And so we will be diving back into the Gods of Eden. As you heard, this is part 6. And I think we are approaching the end of the stuff I want to cover from this book. So maybe one more episode. I'm not sure how much I've got everything marked that I wanted to go through. But we're already up to like the 1500s AD, and like, I don't know, it's like the closer to the present it gets, the less interested I am, because this podcast is about ancient mysteries, and this is not, it's less and less ancient as we go. Yeah. So I would say to everybody that you should all get the book if you want to read basically the second half. There's a couple of chapters I've marked out in the second half that have some stuff that I specifically want to go through, but most of the second half of the book is modern history, and we're just not going to go through that on the podcast. So
yeah, check out Hardcore History podcast if you want modern history.
Yeah, there you go. But there are a couple of things in the second half of the book that we will be going through, and I have marked them off. And then, of course, we will get to his closing. I like to, usually when we do these book reports, I like to read the epilogue, as it were, whatever the author writes at the end of the book. And Bramley's got a pretty good one that he calls a note to researchers. So it gives people path. He's like, look, I couldn't possibly follow all the rabbit holes that this opens up, but here are some for any other researchers that want to follow this. So
that's cool.
Yeah, we'll be going through that. So if not this episode, maybe the next one. I don't know. I don't think we'll finish the book this episode, but probably, if not the next episode, then the one after that. It shouldn't be more than 2 more episodes, but I'd say probably next week we'll be done with it. And I have a bunch of great emails. Do you have stories?
I have one.
He has one story. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do Space for the News.
And the keyboard works, and it's glorious.
The keyboard totally worked, and you were going to sing it yourself.
Yeah, I
forgot. He was like, I'm just going to sing it if it doesn't work, and it completely worked. This is the first time in a month that's happened. So, Space for the News, or if you're one of the emailers from last week, this might be Space Weather Recent History.
Oh, yeah.
Sunset Sky Show, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. When the sun goes down tonight, step outside and look west. See Venus? She is about to have company. Mercury is approaching for a 1-degree conjunction on May 21st and 22nd. The planets will be so close together you can hide them behind a fingertip held at arm's length. Wow. Then on May 23rd and 24th, the crescent moon joins the show, and it's a great way to end the day. Also, inferior conjunction of Venus. On June 3rd, Venus will pass almost directly between Earth and the Sun, an event astronomers call the inferior conjunction. This is changing the face of Venus in an extraordinary way. The planet has become a slender crescent, growing thinner every night. So there's successive images of it as it gets closer to that conjunction.
Nice.
Dave Eagle sends these pictures from the United Kingdom, and he says, watching Venus grow in size and the crescent get steadily thinner has been amazing over the past few weeks. It will change even quicker now as it approaches inferior conjunction. So Venus is slenderizing because it is turning its night side towards the Earth. As Venus approaches the sun, only an increasingly narrow sliver of Venus's day side is visible. So it's like a miniature version of the crescent moon. Amateur astronomers are encouraged to monitor Venus in the lead up to this inferior conjunction. Only a little magnification is required to see the crescent. Binoculars or a small telescope will do the trick. In the nights ahead, the planet's shape will become increasingly thin and circular. The horns of the crescent might actually touch when the Venus-Sun angle is at its least on June 3rd, so stay tuned.
That's cool.
So it might become like a ring. That would be cool to see. Current conditions, solar wind speed is 359.0 kilometers per second, and the density is a medium 5.0 protons per cubic centimeter.
All right. And from the Daily Wire, which I have never read from before, Bizarro World. NASA scientists detect evidence of parallel universe where time runs backward.
Oh.
This is by Joseph Curl. What if there's a parallel universe with a parallel Earth where everything is exactly the same except people eat corn on the cob vertically instead of horizontally?
What?
Oh
It
my
might
gosh.
just be out there, NASA scientists say. Quote, NASA scientists have detected evidence of a parallel universe right next to ours, where all the rules of physics seem to be operating in reverse, end quote. The UK's Daily Star writes, now, I no longer get tabloids from the Daily Star, but I am reading a story where this guy's apparent main source is that tabloid. But I went and looked at, there's many, many articles about this, so I know this is legit. At least this NASA, what NASA is claiming here is really what NASA is claiming. I'm not saying it's a real parallel universe. But anyway, scientists at the National Aeronautics Space Administration have conducted a series of cosmic ray detection experiments, which have found particles that could be from outside our universe. NASA's Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA, uses a giant balloon to haul delicate electronic antennas high into the cold, dry air above Antarctica, where there is little or no radio noise to distort its findings. There is a constant wind of high-energy particles coming from outer space, some of which are 1 million times more powerful than anything we can generate ourselves. Low-energy particles, neutrinos, can pass completely through the Earth, barely interacting with the substance of our planet at all. But higher-energy objects are stopped by the reassuringly solid matter of the Earth. That means that high-energy particles can only be detected coming down from outer space. To detect a heavier particle, a tau neutrino, coming up out of the Earth would imply that these particles are actually traveling backwards in time. And that is exactly what the ANITA scientists have seen. What? Stick with me here.
Yeah.
The findings suggest evidence of a parallel universe, the Star reported. The initial experiments were conducted in 2016, but researchers have been combing over the data and recently detected what they think are particles moving upward from Earth. You remember we talked about this experiment they were doing. I mean,
yeah.
I had a story about it where they were like, what is going on? They put them up there to detect these particles coming down, and they were like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
They're coming from the wrong direction.
They're hitting the detectors from the bottom.
That's right. Principal ANITA investigator Peter Gorham, an experimental particle physicist at the University of Hawaii and lead author on a Cornell University paper describing the odd phenomenon, said the simplest explanation is that at the instant of the Big Bang some 13.8 billion years ago, there were two universes formed. The one we know and another one that, from our position, appears to be going in reverse, with time going backward.
That's the simplest
explanation for this problem.
Wow.
Quote, all sorts of suggestions rooted in known physics have been put forward to account for the perplexing signal, and all have been ruled out, new scientists reported. What's left is shocking in its implications. Explaining this signal requires the existence of a topsy-turvy universe created in the same Big Bang as our own and existing in parallel with it. In this mirror world, positive is negative, left is right, and time runs backwards. It is perhaps the most mind-melting idea ever to have emerged from the Antarctic ice, but it might just be true. Then again, the scientists say there's a possibility that the odd results came from an error the Anita made. We're left with the most exciting or most boring possibilities, said Ibrahim Safa, who also works on the experiment. So,
Wow.
this guy, Curl, obviously didn't go to the same journalist school as all the other journalists.
Oh, is he doing it good? He's doing it?
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Yeah, it doesn't have that annoying dialogue thing
Problem.
going on.
Yeah.
But I kind of thought this was cool. Like the idea of a single other parallel universe that is literally
It's
in reverse. Like if you
polar.
imagine it,
Yeah.
it's polarized.
Yeah.
You look at a cross section of an electromagnetic field, right, and you have these two.
Yeah. You have this figure 8 pattern.
Yes, and
I
one
agree.
side is it. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And they're not saying there's an infinite number of them.
Right.
But come on, nobody's going to eat their corn cob that way.
I know.
If time's going backwards, they would eat it the same way. It would just be putting the corn back onto it.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, why would it matter which direction time is going? For them,
Right, for anybody
the
living
past,
there, it would be the
yeah,
same.
the past would still be the past, and the future would still be the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a cool idea to think
I
about.
thought that was cool,
Yeah.
and this is interesting because you could say that it's steady state
Yeah.
because energy is being destroyed,
Right, if the
energy is also
system-
being created, and then you have entropy, total entropy at one end and total order at the other,
Yeah.
but the other one is flipped.
Yeah.
So you're creating we're reaching higher and higher entropy as that one is reaching higher and higher simplicity.
Yep. Yeah,
That's-
basically, if you have to apply the laws of conservation of mass, momentum, and energy to both of those as the whole system, then suddenly
Yeah.
a
Now,
lot
see,
of things changes. Yeah.
Something about that clicks with me. Like that is beautiful. There's symmetry.
Yeah.
So I like that.
And it's also like very close to what Laird Scranton says. A lot of the ancient, I mean, you have this world and the other world.
Yeah.
Right. And they're
The
like
weave and the woof,
interwoven
yeah.
with each other. And yeah.
Yep.
So
Like the right and left brain.
That's right.
Yeah.
All these
that's where we go.
dualities.
Yeah.
You know, the duality of nature.
that's where we go when we're dreaming. That's why it's so weird. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
You
kind of
fall
the same,
asleep,
but it's
you're-
kind of weird. Yeah.
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 That's why dreams are strange.
Yeah. So like you were saying with the right and left brain, like a lot of things in our side of the universe still exhibit this dual
Duality.
nature, this
Yeah.
duality nature, kind of like you see, the golden ratio in the tiniest little flower bud, but you
Yeah.
also see it in galaxies. It's
Yeah.
a scale invariance.
Yeah. Scale invariant.
type of
Yeah.
thing.
Fractal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No matter how much you zoom in or out, the complexity remains the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, we have one other announcement. It's you guys' anniversary.
Yay!
That's right.
Happy anniversary, babe.
I held this thing
Thank you.
upside down,
Happy
damn it.
anniversary to you. No, you did. That was brilliant.
Yeah, you did it
He just grabs that off the desk over there. So yeah, we've been married for 13 years today.
13.
Isn't that right?
13, yeah.
Lucky 13.
Yeah.
We're gonna make it.
Yeah.
Don't
But in
bust
the
out them
other-
divvy papers.
In the other universe you're talking about, it's unlucky 13.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's where that comes from, babe. It's the
Yeah.
other. In the other universe, we're getting a divorce.
Yeah. But then we're going to get remarried.
Well, in the other universe, your guys are getting younger and you've been married for your entire lives.
Oh, we're about to get
Yeah,
under.
Oh, are we, or like,
You
it's
have
like a
13
Benjamin Button kind of
Yeah,
thing?
yeah. It says time runs backwards. You have 13 years left before you're not married anymore.
Okay, so Benjamin Button, that movie was onto something. Okay. Okay, well, yeah. Thanks, Russ.
Yeah.
Best man.
I'm glad I remembered it.
Yeah,
that
you
time.
get some of
you
the credit.
We got in here. I completely forgot again.
It's really something special. I think it said it's a good sign. We're doing something good in here with the podcast that you got birthday, anniversary,
Yes.
all on Wednesday.
I know, that's
Crazy.
crazy.
They
All on
landed-
the- yeah, that's-
in a row. All of our birthdays and then the anniversary have
Yeah.
all landed on podcast days.
Yeah, I like stuff.
They've
like
all
that.
been
I'm
on
into
Wednesdays?
symbolism.
Or did
It's
we do them different days?
Each one has been on a Wednesday. I kid you not.
That's wild.
Is that normal?
August 1st.
I mean,
this
like,
is what I'm
are all
saying.
of our birthdays and our anniversary always on the same day of the week?
I don't
No,
know, but now
there's
I'm going
no
to
way.
look at
There's
it
no way,
from here
'cause-
on out. But August 1st, of 2019. February.
Hey. You're doxing people.
Well, I mean, we've said happy birthday. They know the day. Well, I won't go through the dates.
You know, they'd have to look it up. But,
Okay. Well, anyway, I won't say the dates, but I have tracked it because I was like, whoa, this is weird. And yes, they've all been on a Wednesday. We've been in here.
They must always all be on the same day of the week.
But there's such
we can
random
check that
numbers.
easily. I mean,
We're going to have to check
Yeah,
that.
we're going to have to check next year to see if something lands on a Tuesday, are they all on Tuesdays? I don't think that's going to be the case.
They're just such random
Because,
numbers.
They're divisions of 7.
I mean, didn't we have an extra day in February this year? Wasn't it a leap year?
We did. You're
But it's
right.
still the 7-day cycle is repeating constantly.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
There's no change.
But we did
in
have
that.
leap year this time. You're
Yeah.
right.
The 7-day cycle repeats, but that shifts the whole next month off of that 7-day cycle because there's one extra day in
That's
February,
true.
right?
Oh, it's because of the leap year.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. It's because of leap year that we've all landed on them. I
So
don't know.
during a leap year, all of our birthdays and anniversary landed on the same freaking day, and they were all podcast days. That's just really weird.
That's just really awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It's a sign we're doing something right.
All right, I got emails. Let's see here. This first one is called. Let's see if I can do this. This first one's called Blackmail. And it starts like this. I have in my possession episode number 1 of Brothers of the Serpent podcast. And if you don't read my previous email about the electric universe,
Oh my God.
I will stream it for all to see. Also, when is the next Cosmographia episode coming out? And then he says, this part is not for reading on the podcast unless you want to read it on the podcast because, well, it's your podcast. I never sent an email about the electric universe theory, and unfortunately, I do not have episode number 1. It was just for fun. Thanks for the entertainment and knowledge, guys. I hope you get well soon, Clint.
I love that.
That's genius.
I love that.
Yeah, have
I
me
was
going,
scared
dude.
for
I
a
know.
second. I was really.
When I first read it, the first part, I was like, what the... What? And then I got to the second paragraph, and I was like, oh, this is genius. This is genius. Thanks, Clint. I've been laughing about that for a week and keeping it secret so I could bust it out on the show for these guys.
That was really good.
Yeah, that was good.
My kind of joke in there, buddy. Yeah.
All right, this one's from Jordan. This is called Snakes for the Inspiration. I love how people are using snakes in all these different ways. He says, Serpent Brothers and Sister Snake.
Ooh.
Just wanted to share with you all how devastated I was just now to come to the end of episode 147 and not hear the comforting sounds of the intro music of the next episode fill my ears with hope for the next 2 hours of my life. I heard you guys in an appearance you made on Where Did the Road Go and have been listening constantly ever since. So I guess what he's saying is like he heard
He
this
finally made it all the way
all
to
the way
the
through. He got to the end of episode 147 and the next one wasn't queued up because it wasn't published yet. And he was like, no,
No. What will I do with my time?
I finally caught up with your podcast after listening for hours a day for the last few months, and sadly, now I've got some auditory gaps to fill in my life. I echo the plea of a recent emailer who wonders why you guys can't produce 3 podcasts a day for us to consume. But more to the point, I'm a pastor of a small church here in upstate New York and also co-owner, brewing director, and sales manager for a local craft brewery.
Wow.
So given my vocational endeavors, I spend a lot of time behind a steering wheel while also pondering the big questions of life here on this planet.
Wow.
I, too, like you, am interested in understanding both who we are and from where we've come, and I'm fascinated by the big mysteries that surround us and often disappointed by the oversimplified and arrogant explanations that are all too often offered by the skirptards of the world. Interestingly, skirp derping is something that happens in the religious and theological tradition as well. Some of the greatest ideas and understandings about faith and scripture, which frequently originate in humble, open minds, are written off as heretical or blasphemous by monolithic, institutionalized religion. So many times in various episodes of your podcast, you bring up Egyptologists that won't allow the questions to be asked about the date of the Sphinx or the function of the Great Pyramid, or you talk about the skirptards who would rather figure out some impossible pattern of winds to maintain their standard model of the Carolina Bays. Every time you've expressed these frustrations, I find myself relating it to frustrations I've found in the church. It seems as though We as a race have lost the desire or perhaps the bravery to ask the big questions, and that's what I love about your podcast. You aren't afraid of the big questions and how they might upset certain comfortable apple carts that we cling to as scared little apple-eating human beings. And when you do this questioning, you invite others into the joy of pondering these questions, even if all you're left with at the end is a certificate of ignorance that you printed yourself.
That's right. That's all we
Dang.
got.
I think that moved up to one of my top favorite emails right there.
Our particular human situation at this point in time seems to be lacking humility, and you guys bring a breath of fresh and humble air to a world of voices that claim to know everything. Well, I've rambled for a bit here, but I wanted to tell you that Serpent Brothers and now Sister Snake have inspired me. You see, I have a brother as well, and we are both pastors and both musicians. And even before I started listening to Brothers of the Serpent, he and I had kicked around the idea of starting a podcast of our own and using our own music. We want to try to bring the inherent seeking of faith, which seems to originate in the heart, into conversation with the inherent seeking of science, which seems to originate in the mind. Our premise being that both are indeed one seeking. I think maybe it was the second or third episode on the Gods of Eden where you asked, is there an inherent spiritual drive? I think there is, but like Bramley explained, it has often been co-opted by dogmatic institutions for particular and specific earthly gain. It is our hope to explore the core of this inherent drive to know of something greater and how it relates to discovery and exploration in all of science, not just standard model uniformitarianism. We, as a couple of questioning pastors, hope to sift through the skirp-derping that has led to the division of faith and science for the first time in this round of human history. I was particularly moved to hear your mom talk about her faith and how important that is to her, but also how your podcast and your questioning doesn't challenge that, but makes it stronger. I would love to hear more of her story. So, as soon as we don't have to be quarantined from one another, my brother and I are going to take the advice that you have offered to others and just start recording.
Yes.
Thanks for your humility, questioning, and insight. Thanks for the awesome bumper music. Thanks to Sister Snake for the intros and now for the great questions. You guys are doing really important work, and your passion is evident. And now that I've caught up and can't chain smoke your episodes anymore, perhaps I'll have time to reflect more deeply and join the conversation as a simple brewer and pastor. You've got a snake in the pulpit now. Cheers. Your snake brother in fermentation, Pastor Jordan.
Woo! Holy smokes!
He also says, P.S. My 8-year-old daughter would love to know how Russ can possibly say angels and demons and monsters and serpents so fast. Any tips for the young lass?
I don't know. I tried it last week. I know.
Practice. I don't know. Just got to practice it. I start out slow, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, and then you just get faster. Angels and demons and monsters and serpents. And it says, PPS, if you send me your t-shirt sizes and mailing address, I will be happy to one-up you some wolf pelts to wear over your SnakeSkins.
Whoa.
Our brewery logo is a wolf.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, dude. So
Who is this? What's
Wait.
the name?
wait. Just the shirts, or are there going to be some beers in there?
yeah. Can you wrap the beers in some shirts? Because we do like to partake of libations while doing the podcast, usually in the second half of the show. But that would be great, man. And yeah, I can reply to this email with the address, or you can hop in the Discord and get it from there.
Hop in the Discord.
You should get in the Discord anyway. Yeah, for sure.
Beautiful
But thank you
email.
so much, dude.
Yeah.
That was an amazing email. Longer
that was
than I usually read, but I just had to read the entire thing there.
That was great.
Yeah, I'd like to go to that church.
Yeah, I know.
Who was it again? Can you tell me?
Jordan was his name.
Okay. When there's a really good email, I make a little note of the name.
Oh, she's keeping track. Yeah. All right, so this is from Michael. It says, at long last, this is the title. At long last, I managed to actually send you an email. My initial disappointment upon realizing that I would have to wait for Gods of Eden Part 6 could not have been more thoroughly overturned. Great show, as always, and now I return to my predominant state of anticipatory restlessness for yet another long week's wait for my next fix of inordinately speedy die-hourly podcrack. Fastest 2 hours in podcasting.
That's right.
Until then, my friends, I bid you farewell. Snakes! And P.S. I made mention of it in the music sector of the Discord, but so I'm sure the message reaches you guys directly, and because if this is read aloud for the Snake fam, it will surely reach more ears. To any snakes not aware of the esoteric goodness that is Decca, I highly recommend the 2013 album, The Ocean. Okay, so he's recommending some music there. Decca, all in caps, DECA. 2013 album, The Ocean. And I think he posted it in the Discord. But
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll check it out.
Thanks, Michael. And I'm glad the intermission episode did not disappoint. Okay. Not that one. Okay, this one's from Paul, and it's called "I Finally Found One." Hello, Snake Bros from Northwestern Ohio. I love your podcast and listen to it often along with Cosmographia. Like yourselves, I have an orchard, but one of apples and peaches instead of grapes and olives. I like to listen to you while working with the trees. The other day, while trimming peach trees and listening to your latest serpentine brilliance, I happened to look down and a triangular stone caught my eye. At first, I figured it was just another limestone chip tricking me like all the other hundreds of times this has happened, but closer look brought my attention to the finely chipped edges, and I realized I had finally found an arrowhead after nearly 40 years of looking.
Good
Yes.
job. Yay.
I can't help but think my luck is in some way thanks to you. Anyway, you guys should come up this way sometime. Kelly's Island on Lake Erie is definitely up your alley. Not only does it have evidence of catastrophe from the YDB, there is also ancient petroglyphs. I have probably gone on way too long, but I could talk to you guys for hours. Say hi to Randall for me. Snakes!
Man.
Congratulations on
Yes.
your first
Yeah.
arrowhead while listening to our podcast.
That's special. Very special.
And yeah, we have peaches at the orchard as
And
well.
plums, yep, and pecans.
And I was just out there the other day, and they were loaded down.
Yes.
And this is like the first, like last year, they were pretty well developed and grown, but we had a late frost when all the flowers were out, and so we almost had no fruit. This year was perfect, and they're just loaded. So I looked up some videos and watched how this guy was going through and thinning the fruit.
Yeah.
You
Thin it out.
about, and so you have one peach about every 6 inches, and I mean they were just like all
Rows
up and
of
down the
them.
branch,
Yeah.
3 of them at a time. So we dropped a lot of fruit on the ground, and it was kind of like, dang, there's so much peaches we're dropping on the ground. But the point is that
The other
if
ones
you
will-
let them all stay on there, they'll end up being small
And hard.
and sour and hard, or just not very good tasting. Because a tree is just trying to reproduce, but we want that, large, sweet fruit.
Yeah,
so
so
you
you-
have to
so
go in and
you
like
gotta
make
make
this
those
sacrifice.
sacrifice.
Yeah, it was cool.
That is cool.
I actually really enjoyed that, just going through that orchard and picking those peaches off. It was kind of like therapeutic in some way.
You really
Yeah.
enjoy just sacrificing peaches.
It was hard. Yeah, because it.
Millions of peaches.
Yep. Well, I like listening to a good cast and pruning grapes and
Yeah.
plucking peaches.
Yeah. Moving to the country, gonna eat a lot of peaches. All right, this one, this is cool, very short, called 7 Ages from Jason Pentrail. I was happy to get this. He said, Snake Bros, just listened to the new episode and wanted to say thanks very much for the shout out. It is much appreciated. Keep up the great work. From Jason Pentrail, co-founder and host of the 7 Ages
Awesome.
audio journal.
Yeah,
So we
man.
gave him a shout out from last week, and
Yeah, we really enjoy y'all's show. for
yeah,
sure.
man, it's really great. So again, anybody who hasn't checked out the 7 Ages audio journal, you really got to. They do great work, and of course Micah Hanks is also in there. And if you like Micah, got to check out the Micah Hanks program, which used to be called the Gralien Report, but he changed it. But it's still a great show. I just listened to the most recent one about the newest Navy weird flying saucer UFO
Yeah, yeah.
releases. Yeah. He does
I need to
great
listen
stuff.
to
But
that.
I really recommend, like, if anybody wants to check out a recent show on the Micah Hanks program, check out the one he did about the Skinwalker Ranch. Man, it was good.
Skim or
Skin.
Like as in the Skinwalker
Okay.
Indian legend.
Okay.
Yeah. It's in the Uinta Basin, the Skinwalker Ranch is, and it's just really weird stuff there.
And I'm super jelly. You guys get to go out and in the field and do all that
Yeah.
cool stuff.
Okay, this one's called, this one's going to be hard to read. because I have my email program set in dark mode, and when people send me text that's like in like blue,
Oh, wow.
I can't see it. It's called Connecting Dots from Glenn. It says, "Hey guys, been catching up on your past episodes for a while, and I'm currently listening to the first one where Soraya came on the show. Your interviews on Where Did the Road Go are how I found out about you, and I've noticed a real evolution in your thought that pretty much correlates with my own, except mine took years and not months like yours." It took us years, I think.
I think it did. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But so the evolution that happened on the podcast is a shorter version of the evolution
Yes,
that we were
exactly.
taking. But I guess when we were starting it, there has been an evolution from the beginning of the podcast to now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Says, "I believe the dots that you're connecting will most likely lead you to the hollow or cavernous Earth theory, and subsequently to the idea that there are relic civilizations living below our feet who knew that a cyclical cataclysm was approaching and took refuge there to survive. After the cataclysm, the above-ground atmosphere would almost certainly be different from the one that they were accustomed to, and they would have to remain underground. The few above-ground survivors would be starting over from scratch, while the knowledge accumulated by the underground dwellers would remain, for the most part, intact, putting them farther ahead of us in all manner of things. It would also make sense that they would require a special breathing apparatus when coming topside to give the survivors advice on how to rebuild. Hence, the stone carvings featuring gods with helmets or spacesuits and masks, and the worldwide legends of these gods bringing them the knowledge of civilization. There was a podcast called Unraveling the Secrets, which dealt with the Hollow Earth theory. Now, most people who subscribe to this don't actually see the world as completely hollow, but with cavern systems stretching far beyond what we are aware of and capable of sustaining the previously mentioned relic civilizations. One of the hosts of this podcast was William Michael Mott, an author and illustrator. His book, Caverns, Cauldrons, and Concealed Creatures, contains a wealth of information and stories of underground beings that conventional science ignores. Mike says he's no longer doing podcasts, but that might change later. He's working on UFO stuff at the present. I actually have 208 of their shows on file. If you're interested, I can send you a thumb drive. It's very encouraging to see young independent thinkers like yourselves taking the initiative and doing the research to actually try to figure out all this crazy stuff instead of pushing science or religion-based agendas. This is how I strive to teach my grandson to think, and he's currently in college studying to be an anesthesiologist and working at a local hospital as an x-ray tech assistant and at a local apothecary. That's interesting. Looking forward to seeing where you guys, including Soraya, take all this. And then he gives a link for where we can get the book. But anyway, yeah, man,
That's cool.
I do think that the idea that there are relic civilizations underground is interesting. I don't know if I would call that Hollow Earth. But yes, I do think, number one, that there are massive cave systems we've never found.
Oh, yeah.
And that the possibility of there being underground civilizations is, I mean, you know, I don't know. It's possible.
Could be.
Yeah.
It's one thing I will say is that in order to spend a lot of time underground, you have to have a lot of good equipment.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that you would have to have serious or some, type of technology. So it's not just like the Varas or whatever where they dug them. I mean, even that, you're like, you dug all these tunnels and then you went and lived there for how long? I mean, how did you do that?
Right.
Without,
There probably was technology in
some
there.
type of something that's similar to modern technology to be able to maintain the oxygen levels or whatever gas you're breathing.
Yeah.
And then what do you do about vitamin D?
Food and water and it's just
Yeah,
all
you have
of
to have
that
supplements
stuff.
and
Yeah, because you can't grow anything under there unless you have lighting.
Hydroponics and lighting. Yeah.
So there's...
And then doesn't something happen to your eyes too when you're, I don't know.
I mean, if it's dark all the time, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I guess you're going to have lights.
You're going to have
right.
light, yeah. But you can't be burning fires.
You can't burn stuff.
You can't have,
You're going to burn up all your oxygen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you won't be able to breathe because it'll be all carbon monoxide. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't just like set fires in there. Yeah, so
Yeah, you're going to have to be prepared for that.
right. All right, this one's from Matt. It's called "Do You Even Snake, Bro?" Russ, Kyle, Brett, and the whole Serpent family. Snakes! This email has been in draft mode in my mind for some time, and I'm finally putting SnakeSkin to screen. Brothers of the Serpent has slithered its way into my mind and heart, becoming my favorite podcast and among my favorite media/content of any type out there. Wow. I'm an avid listener and Patreon supporter, and although I hadn't realized it, I have been a snake bro my whole life. First off, I wanted to share some warm and fuzzies as an older brother who has also spent years going down the rabbit hole with my brother on all of the ancient and mysterious topics. I love the brotherly banter and endless jokes and laughs that arise from your conversations. You guys are inspiring and have really hit on something special here. You should be so proud of what you created. And Kyle, special shout out for the music. As so many others have said in emails and reviews, the music is really phenomenal and it gets me moving every time.
Oh, man. Thanks, buddy.
One question that my mind has been coiled around has to do with the massive megalithic stone blocks that form the ancient foundations of building around the world, such as under the Temple of Jupiter in Baalbek. I have long wondered what this implies about the original ancient structures. Were these blocks used to make buildings? If so, were these buildings made entirely of megalithic blocks, or were those massive blocks only used for the foundations of these buildings? Or were the blocks used to create something other than a building? Do you know what the current thinking is, or do you have your own thoughts about this? And there's more, but we should probably address that first. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. The weird thing about Baalbek is that the trilithon, those huge stones are just a wall. They're almost like
they're
a retaining
disconnected
wall.
from their, yeah.
They're not an actual foundation. I mean, they could be, but it would be they could be a foundation for a wall.
Yeah.
That's what's so weird about it.
Yeah, they don't hold anything up.
It seems like, why would you do that? You would not have to go to those lengths to make a retaining wall.
Yeah.
So it was either easy for them.
Yep.
Or there, like you said, there was some other purpose.
Yeah.
There was some utility to those stones being that big because of something else.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be going on there.
Yeah.
I agree with that, and I think that Baalbek is a good. It's so easy to see at Baalbek that you have different stages of construction.
Oh yeah.
And the blocks that are directly above the trilithon type blocks are also enormous. They're just not on the same scale as those blocks, but they're still gigantic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's clear to me that that whoever was building temples on top of that place came and found it later, and maybe what was there before is almost completely gone. I don't know. But whoever was like, it was obviously, it may never have been finished because the quarry clearly has more gigantic blocks in it.
Stacked up and ready to go.
That were ready to go.
There's
and
one dropped between the quarry and the site. And yeah.
So it's possible that it never got completed. That original structure with those gigantic blocks was just never done. And it looks like this all over the world. You see like absolutely enormous quarrying operations that seem to have been halted mid-job, and they were never picked up again. And that's, to me, one of the most haunting mysteries of the ancient, of these impossible blocks. That you find them in lines going from the quarry to the site.
Yeah.
Like they were being transported and they just got dropped and no one ever came back and picked them up again and continued the work.
Yeah, and if something were to happen today that just stopped us all dead in our tracks, it would look the same.
Yeah.
Because our quarries are servicing multiple job sites.
Right.
Right. They're not. We have these we don't have to quarry right next to the site.
Yeah.
And so you would have, like, there's a quarry down the road from us. Now they're getting aggregates out of there.
Right.
But if it's some way they were preserved, you would find this massive quarry, and then if you followed this weird path through the woods, you'd eventually find an iron stain in a pile of that material.
Yeah.
And then a couple 100 yards in front of that, you'd find another one, because these trucks are in massive lines going out of that quarry with the materials in them. So you'd see the same sort of thing if you had the technology to
that's a
find it.
great point. Like all those blocks dropped en route could have been on the vehicles.
On the vehicles,
and the vehicles are just gone because they were made of metal.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, maybe the custodians were just like, okay, they're moving way too big of blocks now. We're going to have to demolish all this.
Yeah, right. Or it was, I mean, it looks like antediluvian. They all got stopped at the same time.
Right, all around the world.
All over the world.
Yeah.
All right, to finish off the email, he says, I also wanted to share an idea I had recently Have you ever considered having contributors to help with your research? The idea comes from the Astonishing Legends podcast. They have a group of friends and fans that make up what they call their Astonishing Research Corps, or ARC, who will do background research and reading on show topics to provide the host with info. I'm not suggesting that you need help, nor am I saying the show lacks research, so don't get me wrong, but it was just a thought I had as I was reading through the amazing library of the Serpent. You've cultivated such a special and dedicated group of fans, I bet there would be a lot of interest in helping you out in any way you need. Plus, you could come up with your own funny name or acronym for the group. Okay, bros, I hope you are all well. Your Snake Bro in Delaware, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, and we do have it. It's called the Snake Force.
Yeah.
And they're in the
awesome.
Discord.
And they help a lot.
They do. There's constantly links being posted, and of course the Library of the Serpent and everything. So yes.
But great email. Thank you.
Yeah. And man, I just have so many more, and we're already out of time.
Yeah, that thing's out of time right there. I'm looking at it. It's been drained for a while now.
We'll take a break.
Yeah.
Hang on to your socks, Grandma. We're going long. Setting the sands of time here in the Tangent Cube of Science. And welcome back to the fastest 2 hours in podcasting, Brothers of the Serpent podcast. And are you going to do some more emails?
Yeah, I got a few more.
Yeah, all right.
And I have also, I want to say, Anne totally blazed me on YouTube. Because when I was like, maybe she means going postal. So I saw her comment on YouTube. She was like, thanks, Russ. I'll just bake some cookies for when the feds show up, shall I? Sorry, Ann.
I knew what you meant,
I'm sure the
Ann.
feds will love the cookies. Okay, so this is a comment on the website for episode 147 from Captain Corden. It says, I would like to say two things. One, get well, Russ. Thank you. And two, in regards to your opening bit about the Carrington event, there is a good person who you might want to get on the show. His name is Ben Davidson. The Grimerica boys have had him on their show before, but he can go into a lot of detail about the Carrington event and what caused it and all the variables. But he might also be able to shed a little light on why the wires caught on fire in that event, but in other events they did not. And then he says, I would give a link or something to contact him if you wanted to get him on the show to see if it's something you would want to, but, well, I'm a Johnson, so contacting people is above my pay grade. Sorry, but here's a contact page for his website. And he links to Suspicious Observers, which is where Ben Davis goes. Yeah, and he says, yes. He says, oh, and before I forget, I have a third point to bring up. So 3 needs more Electric Universe. And yeah, so... we are aware of the Suspicious Observers, and Ben Davidson has a lot of... I think he's more like Plasma Universe as opposed to Electric. I think that's what he says. He's more about a Plasma Universe as opposed to the Electric Universe theory. But yeah, he would be cool to talk to. I've never tried to reach out to him, though.
I did not know there was a Plasma Universe theory. I mean, the Electric Universe theory, or at least, like Wall Thornhill... talks a lot about the plasma and all that. That's kind of the mechanism for these large energy structures. I don't know what else to call them.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that like Suspicious Observers has their own version of the Electric Universe, and so he wants to just make it distinct from the EU, and he calls it Plasma Universe because it's not quite the same. It really isn't the same, but he's got 3 really, really great long documentaries that sort of outline the way he looks at all this stuff, and it's not the same as the Electric Universe.
Okay.
But very interesting nonetheless. Okay, so this is from Nick. He has been sending us artwork. So this one's beautiful. Look at this. I posted this in the Discord. Oh, wow. This is his version of a Naga. Okay, so this is cool.
Naga.
Yeah, he says, Snake Bros, the Phaya Naga is on virtually every temple in Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos that I have visited. As a resident of Thailand for 15 years on the Laos and Thai border overlooking the Mekong, this serpent is revered, extracting a significant psychological hold on the culture. However, is it in essence like the Chinese dragon, a symbol of a dimly remembered long-tailed comet?
Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's
The
cool.
Naga. He says, a sidebar, I have been to Laos on a number of occasions and have spent a few days at the Plain of Jars.
Ah.
There are other sites that on the surface are equally perplexing to a Western world perspective, however, remove the Christian overlay and, well, things look quite different. Nick. So that last part I don't understand. What does that mean? I don't think I look at the Plain of Jars with the Christian overlay, so I'm not. It's still weird to me.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that, Nick? I would love to hear what you mean. I guess he doesn't say they look less strange. He just says they look quite different, which I can understand that.
Just watch where you're stepping. Don't step on a bouncing Betty.
Right. Don't step on the mines. Yeah. Okay, so this is from Kevin again.
Like Kevin?
Yeah, the Kevin, the one that's been talking to you.
Oh, yeah. What's up, Kevin?
Moses and the Ten Commandments. Says, hello, Snakes. Listening to the Sign and the Seal episodes again and had an interesting thought. It was mentioned that the second time Moses came down from the mountain, his face was glowing. I'm thinking that he created the first iPads and the glow was from the screens. Daylight readable, of course. Eventually, so he comes down carrying these 2 tablets and his face is glowing. Eventually, we will figure out how to make the flexible yet hard screens for our devices, and we will be that much closer to understanding the secrets of the ancients. And also, let Laura know, I will be at the Scablands conference, and there is a pic headed her way via the Tantric Q of Science 1-Up box.
Yeah.
Peace to all the Serpent family from Kevin.
I'll look forward to it.
All right, I think that's... Well, I got this last one from Ian here. He says, hey, bros, sorry for the late night music peddling the other night. Yeah, he was sending me drunk emails. I realize you're not exactly a music-focused podcast, but I thought you boys would dig it. Hope you find time to check it through. No worries if not. Just wanted to say thanks for the heads up on a few great podcasts. Thanks to you, I am now loving Mike and Maurice, Grimerica, Cosmographia, and the Higher Side chats. Not sure if you guys put me on this last one, but it's awesome. I've rambled about a curiosity for Hermeticism and Gnostic stuff before, and you guys put me onto Randall's back catalog, which is amazing. But there was a guy called Miguel Connor from the Aeon Byte podcast on Grimerica the other day, and I reckon you guys and some of the Snake Force would find it really interesting. It's next on my list for a deep dive. Great show the other day, by the way. It was nice to finally meet the nothing guy, Brendan, who seems like a legendary snake bro. And Chris from Dabbler's Den, which I'll definitely be getting stuck into. Look forward to tomorrow's show. Warm and fuzzies from Ian.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, he's saying one of his he was like, I just got stuck into a bottle of shroom vodka that's been hiding in our drinks cabinet for an age, and I discovered this gem. And then he sends me links to YouTube music.
I think I saw that in the Discord. I think I saw somebody holding up a bottle of liquor.
Oh, that was Ryan showing that he had just finished a Crown bottle because it was his birthday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's like, well, this happened, and it's like an empty Crown bottle.
And then he's like, and now I'm on to this,
Yeah,
right? And there's like a beer. Yeah.
I've jumped in there on Fridays, like Friday nights. People start just seeing pictures of their booze set up.
Yeah.
It's freaking great.
That's right.
Man, I love that Discord so much.
The Discord
good,
is
that's
great. Yeah.
I need to give it more love. I don't.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I love it up, and then I get busy doing a few things, and then I jump back in, and I'm like, whoa, so much stuff has happened since I
Yeah.
was in here last.
Can't keep up. No.
Yeah, you can't keep up.
So then, yeah, you just do the best you can.
I gave Tony in the Discord a shout out on, was it the last episode? Or was it parts 5? Not the last one, but the one where I wasn't sick. And so today in the Discord, he's like, in the spoilers, which is where everybody talks about previous shows. He's like, I'm listening to 145. Just wanted to say, snitches get stitches. And I'm like, what? And then Jeff was like, yeah, or Tony told me, he was like, yeah, you were telling people to tell on people if they were doing political stuff. And he's like, I think I'm probably the most likely guy to do political stuff, so I was just pre-warning those snitches.
Snitches get stitches.
He was not even in, I wasn't even thinking of him when I was talking about don't post politics, but apparently he thought it was totally directed at him.
Okay.
So maybe it was directed at you if you think you're the guy that posts political stuff. All right.
Here's the book.
Here's the book. So.
Wait.
What?
I had something that I wanted to say.
Oh. Let's hear it.
Whoa.
Sorry.
Slow down.
Sorry to be so abrupt. When you were talking about the misting and the fields,
Yeah.
it made me think of the Rajneesh movement in Wasco County, Oregon. That Netflix did a wild, wild country documentary on it, but there was some aspects in there that I've been hearing in the book. And with the misting, it's advertised on the Netflix show as being like a sex cult, but really it was like a religious movement. But they basically were growing salmonella in their little labs in this commune that they were building. And they would, they were trying to take over, get political seats to basically take over the town. And they rigged up these little machines, wore these long sleeve shirts, had a tube coming down the end of the sleeve, and would go into the restaurants and just spray the salad bars with salmonella. So I was thinking about that when you were talking about it. But also, there was
Masters of the custodial art.
Yeah.
yeah. Also, there was some of the God Gambit stuff because they had the main guy, let's see. I can't remember his full name, but Rajneesh was, I think, his last name. He was kind of made into like the God figure of the movement. And then at one point, he kind of just stopped speaking in public. And he had Sheila, this woman that he trusted, and she would speak for him.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like that. And then everything went to hell in a handbasket, and she got blamed.
Of course.
Yeah.
Classic.
But there was some stuff going on in that movement that while you were reading, you know, it just reminded me of that. So I was telling Kyle, I guess that's just more like a recent time in history because it was just in like the 80s or 80s, I think it's 80s, where you see some of these elements here in this book in some crazy religious movement. They had it all twisted up. They're trying to disguise it as like Hinduism, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it reminds me of like when she told me the whole story, it's like they used all the same elements that you would see in like some of the big religions, like how they get, you know, when he goes through the Muhammad situation and how it gets twisted around and, you know, and then of course Mormonism, we talked about that before and how, you know, it could have started with some strange thing that happened to the guy. But then, of course, over time, it gets manipulated and turned into this big sort of...
Yeah, it snowballs into...
Yes. And it's like the way he's painting it out, like this is the custodian type. Or you can see like the custodial work coming into this thing.
Yeah.
And so...
The effect of the bad brotherhood.
Yes. It made me think that like maybe these things are... They're constantly trying to start these up because it's sort of like we have all these big religions that are worldwide... And they started thousands of years ago. Well, Mormonism is like the most recent large religion, right? Yeah. But it's like there's things happening all over. Like in this one, it's just a little county.
Yeah.
You know.
They all wore red. They were known as the red people, the orange people.
I remember.
It could have blown up into some massive worldwide thing in a couple of thousand years. Yeah. Right? But it sort of fizzled out. They got busted by the FBI. Yeah. It's like, you know. Yeah. But it just made me think like, man, these things are happening all the time. Yeah. Like some type of weird mind game.
Yeah.
To sort of, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so bringing it back to the whole Bramley like UFO alien thing, if you read Jacques Vallée's books, he, you know, and Jacques Vallée is like a scientist who is interested in UFOs in the aspect of them being some kind of strange technology, right? He's really, and he's a really good researcher, but he keeps running into cults all the time. And he's like, why do these cults spring up around UFO people?
Oh.
And it's the same deal. So someone has an quote unquote abduction experience or they have a contact experience or something like that.
Or like an enlightened experience?
No, like they're contacted by what they think of as, or what they claim to be, you know, alien beings. And then the next thing you know, they're starting a cult. and they get all these followers, and the followers are following them because like this person has a direct line to the gods. But of course, in the modern day and age, the gods are just aliens that have much higher knowledge and are like enlightened or whatever. They're going to bring us into a new utopia. All the same crap that you see in these cults going back for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just couched in modern language.
Yeah.
And I just want to say this again. I know I've talked about this many times, but I think it is incorrect to imagine the past at any point as some type of utopian situation where everybody was at one and we had 0 point energy and we were all blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah.
You see this so often, and I just...
It's a dream.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to imagine.
But it's not real.
You know, we're always going to be fighting the elements. We're going to be, here I go again about war. Don't trigger anybody, but like seriously, guys, we're going to be at war with ourselves, even if we had, you know, free energy and all this kind of stuff. There's always going to be hardship.
Yeah. Yep.
So
there's no such thing as a free lunch, especially when it says free lunch.
Yeah.
That just means the payment is hidden.
that's right.
All right. Even though we talk about looking for the free lunch, that's kind of a joke. But yeah, I mean, you can be at war with yourself.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
You know, like everybody has things about themselves that they wish they didn't do, and you fight it your entire life. You know, or you overcome it and then you're fighting the next thing.
Yes.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm laughing because it's just so sad and true.
So war is an institution between large groups of people and in the form of governments is not the same as fighting off the weather.
Yes.
But it is conflict, and that is the nature of this material universe.
I mean, you go to any bookstore and the self-improvement section is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody goes to the pessimist section where it's just you're going to fail.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work for self-improvement.
No one writes books on how to fail because everybody knows how to do that.
Yeah.
That's right. And they would be real short. Life sucks, then you die. I mean, you just don't need a whole lot there.
Yep.
All right, so in the book now, I want to make sure I'm in the right place. I think the last thing I read was about Cyprus. So we were in the middle of Bramley making a bunch of quotes from the same author, from Mr. Knoll, in a book that he wrote about a huge book that he wrote about the plagues. Okay, so Knoll is pointing out all these weird things that were happening in all these places. He talks about China, and then about how there was no wind, and the air grew putrid, and the epidemic broke out, and people got it straight from the air. Reports of deadly mists and pestilential fogs. Prague Chronicle. Let's see. And there were earthquakes, and then the fogs like come out of the ground, right? So the same historian continues. It says, similar incident of earthquake and pestilential fog was reported from Cyprus, and it was believed that the wind had been so poisonous that men were struck down and died from it. And he also adds, German accounts speak of a heavy, vile-smelling mist which advanced from the east and spread itself over Italy. And then in other countries, people were convinced that they could contract the disease from the stench, or even, as is sometimes described, they could actually see the plague coming through the streets as a pale fog.
Yeah.
The earth itself seemed in a state of convulsion, shuddering and spitting, putting forth heavy poisonous winds that destroyed animals and plants, and called swarms of insects to life to complete the destruction. So it's, again, I point out on this that, like, you know, a plague that kills people shouldn't be killing animals and plants. You know, I mean, I can understand insects showing up because everything's dead. You know, you're going to get clouds of insects if you have tons of stuff dead.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, that's like a gas or
Right.
something.
It's some kind of, Similar happenings are echoed by other writers. A journal from 1680 reported this odd incident. Okay, and I did read this. So this is they see the man standing on standing with a white cross on top of a bier, And a great heat set in, so the people in the place could hardly stand it. But when the sun had set, they perceived a perfume so sweet that they were in a garden of roses. But by this time, they were all plunged into perturbation, and the epidemic set in Thuringia in many places. So, like, first, they see this weird person and a white glowing cross, and he's standing on what looks like a bunch of caskets or something, right? And then it got incredibly hot. And they couldn't stand it. And then there was this really sweet smell. And then they all started dying from the plague after that. It's so strange.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
So evil-smelling mists are blamed as indicative of the plague. And of these, indeed, several were observed last autumn. This is another report. And then direct from the plague-ravaged town of Eisleben, we get this amusing and perhaps exaggerated newspaper account published on September 1st. In the cemetery of Eisleben on the 6th, at night, the following incident was noticed when during the night the gravediggers were hard at work digging trenches, for on many days between 80 and 90 people had died, so they were just having to dig mass graves. They suddenly observed that the cemetery church, more especially the pulpit, was lighted up by bright sunshine, but on their going up to it, so deep a darkness and black thick fog came over the graveyard that they could hardly see one another, in which they took to be an evil omen. Thus, day and night, gruesome evil spirits are seen frightening the people, goblins grinning at them and pelting them, but also many white ghosts and specters. So, like, this is where modern researchers think these people were just terrified. They were just scared. But the same newspaper story later adds, when the magister expired in his agony, a blue smoke was seen to rise from his throat. And this in the presence of the dean. And the same has been observed in the case of others expiring. In the same manner, blue smoke has been observed to rise from the gables of houses at Eisleben, all the inhabitants of which have died. In the church of St. Peter, blue smoke has been observed high near the ceiling. On this account, the church is shunned, particularly as the parish has been exterminated. So, like, everyone there is dead. And way up in the tops of the building in the church, they see this same blue smoke that they think they see coming out of people's mouths when they die.
Man.
The mists or plague poisons were thick enough to mix with normal air moisture and become part of the morning dew. People were warned to take the following precautions. Quote, if newly baked bread is placed for the night at the end of a pole, and in the morning is found to be mildewed and internally grown green, yellow, and uneatable, then when thrown to the birds and dogs causes them to die from eating it, in a similar manner, if birds drink the morning dew and die, then the plague poison is near at hand.
Man, that is really
strange. So like if you're thinking aerosol sprays, it's in the dew in the morning, and then the birds birds are licking it off and then they die.
Yeah.
Drinking it.
Yeah.
As noted earlier, lethal mists were directly associated with the bright moving lights in the sky. Other sources for the stenches were also reported. For example, Forestus Alcamarianos wrote of a monstrous whale he had encountered, which was, quote, 28 ells or 105 feet in length and 14 ells or 33 feet broad, which, coming from the western sea, was thrown upon the shore of Egmont by great waves and was unable to reach the open again. It produced so great a foulness and malignity of the air that very soon a great epidemic broke out in the neighborhood. So that sounds like a whale beaches, and then it starts to putrefy.
Yeah.
And then they think, is that what's killing people?
Oh.
And so he says, Bramley says, it is a shame that Mr. Alcamarianos, I don't know how to say this guy's name, did not provide a more detailed description of the deadly whale, because it may have been a craft similar to modern UFOs, which have been observed entering and leaving bodies of water. On the other hand, the whale may have just been just that, a dead, rotting whale which happened to wash up on shore just before a nearby outbreak of the plague. It is significant that foul mists and bad air were blamed for many other epidemics in history. During a plague in ancient Rome, the famous physician Hippocrates stated that the disease was caused by body disturbances brought on by changes in the atmosphere. To remedy this, Hippocrates had people build large public bonfires. He believed that large fires would set the air aright. His advice was followed centuries later by physicians during the medieval plague. Modern doctors take a dim view of Hippocrates' advice on this matter, however, in the belief that Hippocrates was ignorant about the true causes of the plague. In reality, huge outdoor bonfires were the only conceivable defense against the plague if it was indeed caused by germ-saturated aerosols. Vaccines to combat the plague had not been invented, and so the people's only hope was to burn away the deadly mists with fire. Hippocrates and those who followed his advice may have actually saved some lives. Significantly, bubonic and pneumonic plagues were not the only infectious diseases in history to be spread on strange and lethal fogs. The deadly intestinal disease, cholera, was another. Quote, when cholera broke out on board Her Majesty's ship Britannia in the Black Sea in 1854, several officers and men asserted positively that immediately prior to the outbreak, a curious dark mist swept up from the sea and passed over the ship, and the mist had barely cleared the vessel when the first case of disease was announced.
Man,
it's strange.
Yeah.
Blue mists were also reported in connection with the cholera outbreaks of 1832 and 1848 in England. As mentioned earlier, plagues had a very strong religious significance. In the Bible, plagues were said to be Jehovah's method of punishing people for evil. Omens preceding outbreaks of the Black Death resembled many of the omens reported in the Bible. Quote, men confronted with the terror of the Black Death were impressed by the chain of events leading up to the final plague, and accounts of the coming of the 14th century pestilence selected from among all the ominous events that must have occurred in the years preceding the outbreak of 1348, those which closely resemble the 10 plagues of the Pharaoh, disruptions in the atmosphere, storms, unusual invasions of insects, and celestial phenomena. In addition, the bubonic form of plague was very similar, if not identical, to some of the punishments inflicted by God in the Old Testament. So he quotes some biblical passages here. But the hand of the Lord was heavy upon the people, and he destroyed them and killed them with emerods, which are painful swellings. That's from 1 Samuel. And the hand of the Lord was against the city with a very great destruction, and he killed the men of the city, both young and old, and they had emerods in their secret parts. That must have sucked. And there was a deadly destruction throughout all the city. The hand of God was very heavy there, and the men that survived were afflicted with the emerods, and the crying of the city went up to heaven. These are all from 1 Samuel. The religious aspect of the medieval Black Death was enhanced by reports of thundering sounds in connection with outbreaks of the plague. These sounds were similar to those described in the Bible as accompanying the appearance of Jehovah. Interestingly, they are also sounds common to UFO sightings. During the plague of 1565 in Italy, rumblings of thunder were heard day and night as if of war, and together with the turmoil and noise as of a mighty army. And in Germany, many places the noise was heard as if a hearse were passing through the streets of its own accord. So they were hearing rumbling noises. So again, I think of also bolides coming in.
Yeah.
And if there's a bunch of them and they're just blowing up in the atmosphere, you hear all this thunder and it's nonstop, and then the fog comes down and everybody starts dying.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like the real deal.
Or it was aliens.
It could be aliens.
I've been thinking about this. I think I'm now shifting to where I think it's stars and aliens always happening together.
Yeah.
I think I'm
Like shooting stars, you mean? You're talking about meteors?
just all the cosmos stuff, all the constellations and everything.
I mean, I definitely,
Therefore, just for like a couple episodes, I was like, it's aliens, dude. now my baby eyes are growing a little bit, and I'm like, okay, we probably have constellations and aliens working.
You mean comets?
Comets. Yeah. Well, and the star myths. I guess I'm thinking of the star myths.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, and the comets.
Yeah.
All of it.
I mean, it could definitely be aliens throwing comets at us.
There you go.
I just don't know. I mean, but a lot of this seems like, but when you get down to like people in the field spraying, I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, that's probably aliens.
I mean, what is that? That isn't a comet, right?
Yeah.
That's something else,
Yeah.
Yep.
But there could be multiple methods of deployment for these weapons, and they may be targeting specific areas, and in other cases they just want to blanket everything. So you just detonate or whatever stuff way up high, knowing that's going to blanket the entire country, or you just want to kill off that town for whatever reason. I don't even know. Like, what is the purpose?
It's a big, complex mix-up of stuff we don't understand.
Right.
Yeah.
And most people think
and aliens are involved.
Yeah. And most people think of the plague in terms of Europe and what it did there and in the UK, but it started in China. And China's enormous, right? So the people think of it, okay, it comes through Asia. So it sweeps across that entire continent, and then it gets into Europe, which is the smallest piece of it.
Yeah.
But was it happening in the Americas too? Yes.
Yeah.
We know that there were plagues that wiped out tons of people. And I mean, there's even that, I can't remember what the source for this was, but there was the interesting, like some of the colonists or people who landed were told by a native, like, you guys can live here, but I just want you to know it used to be occupied. They all died from some kind of weird disease, and now it's like cursed. Or we don't live here because everyone who did live here is dead.
Okay.
And he was like warning them, like, hey, have at it,
Yeah.
but we stay away from this place
Proceed
because
at your own-
everyone
yeah.
freaking died who
Yeah.
lived here. And, so that's, I don't know. It's like that this was a global phenomenon is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense for, if you're like trying to maintain, if you're doing some kind of population control, why would you just do it to Europe? No, you do it to the whole world.
Exactly.
So, okay. Similar noises accompanied strange aerial phenomena in remarkable plague-related sightings from England. The object described in the quote below remained visible for over a week and does appear to be a true comet or planet, such as Venus. However, some of the other objects can only be labeled as unidentified. Historian Walter George Bell, drawing on writings from the period, summarizes, quote, late into dark December nights of the year 1664, London citizens sat up to watch a new blazing star, with mighty talk thereupon. King Charles II and his queen gazed out of the windows at Whitehall. Out east it rose, reaching no great altitude, and sank below the southwest horizon between 2 and 3 o'clock. In a week or two it was gone, and then letters came from Vienna notifying the like sight of a brilliant comet, and, quote, in the air the appearance of a coffin, which causes great anxiety or thought amongst the people, unquote. Erfurt saw it with other terrible apparitions, and listeners detected noises in the air as of fires and sounds of cannon and musket shot. So again, you have this bolide explosion stuff.
Yeah.
The report ran that one night in February, following hundreds of persons had seen flames of fire for an hour, which seemed to be thrown from Whitehall to St. James and then back again to Whitehall, whereafter they disappeared. In March, there came into the heavens a yet brighter comet, visible 2 hours after midnight, and so continuing until daylight. With such ominous portents, the Great Plague in London was ushered in, unquote.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just...
So they see a comet. It's real close. It's there for a long time. It's like kind of on the horizon, coming up and down. Like it sets around 3 a.m. It doesn't come up much higher for whatever reason. But after a while, they start hearing, like it's like pieces of it were actually impacting.
Yes.
Not the whole thing, but like, it's
The
getting
tail
close to the
of it or
sun, and
whatever, the
so we
breakup.
run into the tail, yeah, and there's just chunks of it coming in the atmosphere, and then everybody gets sick, starts getting sick and dying. Other less frequent omens were also reported in connection with the Black Death. Some of those phenomena were obvious fictions. Significantly, the fictions were not widespread and were rarely reported outside of the communities in which they originated. So I think his point there is, when you have widespread reports of stuff, you can look at those as being less likely to be weird fictions.
Yeah.
But like in a small community, they're like, oh my God, they were like ghosts coming out of the ground or whatever they were saying. And nobody else reports that. He's like, all right, they were scared or whatever. But when you get going from China all the way to Europe, people are saying there were booms in the sky and pestilential mists and, whatever. Those are more that even though they're anecdotal, they're more, believable. Just even though they're strange, there's so many people report them across all these countries. The preceding quotes provide evidence that UFOs, or i.e. the custodial society, have bombarded the human race with deadly diseases. This evidence is particularly intriguing when we consider claims made by a number of modern UFO contactees who say that they are relaying messages to mankind from the UFO society. Some of them claim that UFOs are here to help mankind and that UFOs will eradicate disease on Earth. The UFO civilization reportedly has no disease. If custodial civilization is indeed so healthy, perhaps it is only because it is not bombarding itself with germ weapons. Like, do what we say and we'll eradicate disease. And it's like, oh, yeah, because you'll stop spreading it on purpose.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
If UFOs truly intended to bring health to the human race, maybe all they needed to do was stop spraying infectious biological agents into the air. The Black Death not only killed a great many people, it also caused deep psychological and social wounds. People in the past were convinced that the epidemics were God's punishment for sin, and this caused deep introversion. It was natural for people to accuse themselves and their neighbors of wickedness and to wonder what they had done to deserve their punishment. So we'll keep getting into this and what he talks about the effect of this on society in the next segment.
All right.
Yeah.
Snakes.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Snake Bros Institute for Advanced Copperlight Studies, where there are no degrees, only certificates of ignorance that you have to print yourself. The Watcher's here. Sweet. Also, I was thinking maybe we ought to take it easy on Grandma.
Yeah. This is all warm and fuzzy love coming from over here.
Well, I was just thinking the other day, I was like, you know what? She's actually doing exactly what we told her to do, which was like, give us 5 stars and then tell everybody we suck.
Yeah.
So she's following instructions perfectly.
Yeah, I know.
I think Grandma is probably really tough.
Oh yeah.
I would say she's probably really tough.
She can handle it.
But I definitely want her to know that it's all coming from the warm and fuzzy.
That's right.
But it's just one of the things we do, you know.
Yeah.
If you're part of the fam, you got to be ready to take it.
We like to dish it out.
That's right.
I mean, the guy that was just like, "Hey, can you guys put a time code in there for when you get to the content?" Because I'm done with my workout before you even get to this show material.
I'm 80% through my workout by the time.
We nailed that guy for like 50 shows straight.
Still do on occasion.
That's right.
Start your workout now.
It's all good.
Yeah.
It was a reasonable request that we flatly turned down.
That's right. You guys have to understand that, like, this is a lot of work and we don't want to do any more.
I'll do a little bit more. I'll take some of the load.
Because we get lots of requests for start up a whole other RSS feed for your back episodes. You know, just real easy stuff like that. Like manage an entire other feed for us who don't want to go looking through your website for the old episodes. You know, we're like, no, guy.
And I already committed to compiling these shows, which is going to take me a while.
Yeah, it is going to take a long time.
Because I'll have to go in to the actual show project file, find where the content starts, and then export that only.
Yeah.
For every show, and then pull them all into a new project folder.
I mean, you could do it with the MP3s, but
same difference.
Yeah, I know.
So it's like one favor a year. Like you're doing that. Nobody needs to ask for anything until like next year.
But Russ was right. Like we're also kind of rebellious. So
Oh yeah. I've seen that firsthand.
Start telling us to do something. We're like, okay, no.
Yeah. Yes.
No.
Yep. I've seen it a million times.
We made it 13 years.
Yeah.
And,
So I phrase my questions differently now. I kind of do this weird little like dance before I start my question because I'm like, okay, what can I?
How can I make him do what I want?
How can I make him do what I want?
So I don't get the immediate no, like how do I go around this? Yeah.
All right. Let's see. So we were talking about the problems with the Black Death and the idea that it's punishment from God for sin. So it says, it was natural for people to accuse themselves and their neighbors of wickedness and to wonder what they had done to deserve this punishment. It rarely occurred to the victims that plagues, even if deliberately inflicted, had nothing to do with trying to make human beings more virtuous. After all, the social and psychological effects of the plague produced the opposite result. The misery and despair generated by the massive death tolls brought about widespread ethical decay. In a dying environment, many people will no longer care about whether their actions are right or wrong. They are going to die anyway. In the fearful climate of the medieval plague, spiritual values noticeably declined and mental aberrations sharply increased. The same results are observed during war. Although the Bible and other religious works may preach that plagues and wars are created by God to ultimately make the human race more virtuous and spiritually advanced, the effect is always the opposite. And yeah, I agree with that. You know, that kind of environment does not make people into like, I mean, some people rise above and become saints, I guess you could think of them as,
Yeah.
but that's why they're considered exceptional.
Yeah.
Because they rose above such awful circumstances. But most people are, you know, you're starving or there's just dead bodies everywhere. What do you do?
Yeah, you just do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do what you got to do.
And
I
it
mean-
definitely doesn't help the kids. Think of
Right.
all the people that are, all the children that are orphaned and then they're in the streets and they are doing all this stuff. They don't have any, you know, they're not even in a place where they can start trying to be spiritually advanced.
Yeah.
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 It reminds me of the World War I survivors
Yeah.
and that whole culture of after World War I and all the returning soldiers who were just
Yeah. Damaged.
damaged goods,
Yeah.
physically and mentally.
Yep.
And what that did to an entire generation, the children that they raised,
Yeah. The
you know,
effects
who
are
had never
long-lasting.
seen anything like that, were living the good life,
Yeah.
but dad was
Yeah.
just
Weird. Yeah.
very weird,
Yeah.
Dad had a
strange.
few
Couldn't talk about
bolts
stuff,
loose,
flipped
yeah.
out about things.
Yeah.
had,
Yeah.
you know, just who
Yeah.
knows?
PTSD and all.
Exactly.
Yeah, it does. It continues on. The damage is not isolated to the people who experienced it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think his point is good that, you know, this is you see these things talked about in religious terms, in terms of like, you know, it isn't going to make us better. But like spreading massive amounts of death everywhere is not going to like increase the spiritual advancement of the human race.
Right.
Yeah.
So the cataclysmic nature of the Black Death overshadowed another disastrous occurrence of the plague years. A renewed attempt by Christians to exterminate the Jews. So this was interesting. I had completely forgotten about this. False accusations circulated that Jews were causing the plague by poisoning wells. And these rumors stirred up a fearsome hatred of Jews inside those Christian communities being devastated by the epidemic. Many Christians participated in the genocide, which may have claimed as many lives, if not more, than the slaughter of the Jews by the Nazis in the 20th century. And so this happened in Germany. And he says Christians, but it's, you know, I'm not sure that that's a fair designation. I don't know. If you have a Christian nation, it's Christian because the monarch is Christian. You can't say that everybody there. It's not the same as people who are Christians now by
Right.
choice,
Yeah, exactly.
right? So he's calling these people Christians, but I don't know. I'm not sure that's a fair designation. Anyway, he says that country, Germany, figured as the site of brutal massacres on the widest possible scale. This is a quote, by the way, from an encyclopedia, which periodically swept the country from end to end. These culminated at a time of a terrible plague of 1348 and 1349 known as the Black Death. Perhaps because their medical knowledge and hygienic way of life rendered them somewhat less susceptible than others, the Jews were preposterously accused of having deliberately propagated the plague, and hundreds of Jewish communities, large and small, were blotted out of existence or reduced to insignificance. After this, only a broken remnant remained in the country, mainly in the petty lordships which protected and even encouraged them for the sake of financial advantages. Only a few large German Jewish communities, such as Frankfurt am Main or Worms, managed to maintain an unbroken existence from medieval times onward.
Worms?
Worms? Yeah. Frankfurt on... I don't even know how to say any of these words. But yeah, Worms is just spelled W-O-R-M-S.
It's German, though.
Yeah, Worms?
Worms.
Worms?
Yeah.
Okay. So W's are V's? Yeah. Okay. The genocides were often instigated by German trade guilds, which excluded Jews from membership. Many of these guilds were direct offshoots of the ancient Brotherhood guilds. In fact, membership in Brotherhood organizations and European trade guilds still overlapped heavily in the 14th century, with leadership in the guilds often being held by men who were members of other Brotherhood organizations. Here again was an instance in which the corrupted Brotherhood network was a significant contributor, if not the primary source, of a major historical genocide. Germany was not the only nation to host Jewish slaughter. The same occurred in Spain. In 1391, a massacre of Jews was perpetrated throughout much of the Spanish peninsula. Although frightened Christians supplied the manpower for these terrible genocides, their activities were not always endorsed by the papacy. To the credit of Clement the Sixth, who served as pope from 1342 until 1352, he tried almost immediately to protect the Jews from the massacre. He issued 2 papal bulls declaring the Jews to be innocent of the charges. The bulls called upon all Christians to cease their persecutions. Clement VI did not fully succeed, however, because by that time many of the secretive trade guilds had become a united faction engaged in anti-papal activity. Pope Clement also did not dismantle the Inquisition, and the Inquisition did much to create the generally oppressive social climate in which such massacres could occur. So you have the Inquisition and the plague. God, it sounds awful.
Yeah.
The combination of plague, Inquisition, and genocide provided all the elements needed to fulfill apocalyptic prophecy. The Catholic Church was on the brink of collapse due to the many clergymen lost to the plague, and from the loss of popular faith in the church caused by the church's inability to bring an end to quote-unquote God's disease. A great many people were proclaiming that the end days were at hand. And true to prophecy, out of this tumult emerged a new messengers from God with promises of an imminent utopia. The teachings and proclamations of those new messiahs had an electrifying effect on the ravaged Europeans and brought about an event of major importance, the Protestant Reformation. So I think what he's pointing out there is this is the same cycle we see over and over. You know, there's this prophesied end of the world, and then a whole bunch of stuff happens that looks like it's the end. And I can imagine how it would look like the end of the world. You got the Inquisition going on; it's like massively repressive. Then everyone starts dying, and then they start lashing out and killing all the people who aren't dying, blaming them for the plague. You know, and it's like the end of the world. And then people show up and start saying, "Hey, the new utopia is coming," and they start up this massive religious revolution, which causes more wars for hundreds of years. It just
keeps going on and on and on. Yeah.
So this chapter is called Luther and the Rose, and we're getting close to the end part where I'm going to start skipping through major portions of the book. Luther and the Rose. In the 14th century, that region of Europe we know today as Germany consisted of numerous independent principalities and city-states. By that time, several of those principalities had emerged as the primary centers of Brotherhood activity in Europe, with most of that activity concentrated in the central German state of, is this Hesse? Hesse? Is that how you pronounce that?
I have no idea.
I think it's Hesse.
Sounds
Watcher,
good.
find out.
He's probably digging around his bag for his headphones.
Oh, okay. I meant to look this up before the show, and I forgot. I think it's Hesse. Well, let's just pause it, and we can check. So I don't want to be saying, because he says it a lot. I don't want to be saying it wrong the whole.
No. We don't pause the show so that you can look things up. That's not how this happens. It's Hesse.
Okay. We'll go with Hesse. In Germany and elsewhere, the Brotherhood and some of its most advanced initiates had become known by a Latin name, the Illuminati, which means illuminated or enlightened ones. And he has a footnote here. This Illuminati should not be confused with another and lesser Illuminati founded in 18th century Bavaria by a man named Adam Weishaupt. The true Illuminati and Weishaupt Illuminati are two distinct organizations. The Bavarian Illuminati will be briefly discussed in an upcoming chapter. Okay. So one of the Illuminati's most important branches in Germany was the mystical Rosicrucian organization. Rosicrucianism was first introduced to Germany by the Emperor Charlemagne in the early 9th century AD. Germany's first official Rosicrucian lodge was established in the city of Worms. Is that what you said it is?
Worms.
Worms. Yeah. In the German state of Hesse in the year 1100 AD. Rosicrucians achieved fame for their dedication to alchemy, their complex mystical symbols, and their secret degrees of initiation. The links between the Illuminati and early Rosicrucians were quite intimate, in that advancement through the Rosicrucian degrees often resulted in admittance to the Illuminati. A number of Rosicrucian histories mistakenly state that the Rosicrucians did not begin their existence until the year 1614, the year in which German Rosicrucians published a dramatic pamphlet in Hesse announcing their presence and inviting people to join them. One reason this mistake is so commonly made, and why the Rosicrucian order has been so difficult to trace as one consecutive existence, is a policy the order adopted of engaging in 108-year cycles of activity and inactivity.
What?
Yeah. This is,
That is weird.
This is what happens to me with this book. I'm going through it. I'm like, okay, Luther and the Rose. I want to talk a little bit about Luther, but there's so much. I can't skip anything. There's almost nothing I can skip, and there's just little tidbits of stuff like this in there. The Rosicrucians. So, according to the regulations, each major branch of the Rosicrucian order was required to establish an official date of its founding, and from that date, each branch was to then compute successive 108-year periods. The first period would be a time of well-publicized and outward activity, during which the branch's existence would be made widely known to the public, and the branch would openly recruit new members. The next period was to consist of concealed and silent activity, in which there was to be no publicity, and no one outside of the members' immediate families would be admitted to membership. Each Rosicrucian branch would then alternate between these two phases every 108 years. As Rosicrucian bodies switched back and forth between their outward and hidden phases, it seemed to observers that the Rosicrucian orders were appearing and disappearing in history.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
According to Dr. Lewis, just why this regulation was brought into effect is not known. The Illuminati and Rosicrucians were major powers behind a new wave of religious movements during the Plague Years. One of the earliest of those movements was a mystical religion known as the Friends of God. So this is another little piece in here. I was like, I can't leave this out. The Friends of God appeared in Germany in the same year that the Black Death first struck Europe. The Friends organization was founded by a banker named Rulman Merswin, who had begun his financial career early in life and had made a sizable fortune. According to Merswin, in the year 1347, he was approached by a stranger claiming to be a, quote, friend of God, unquote. The identity of this mysterious stranger was never revealed by Merswin, leading to suspicion that Merswin had merely invented him. It appears, however, that Merswin's friend was quite real and quite influential, as evidenced by the sudden change in Merswin and by the considerable support that the Friends movement was able to so quickly gather. We got a storm coming out there.
Oh, yeah.
I'm hearing some thunder.
Yep.
During one of their earliest encounters, Merswin's mysterious friend stated that he had many mystical revelations directly from God and that Merswin had been chosen to disseminate these revelations to the rest of the world. Merswin was deeply impressed. After that meeting, Merswin gave up his banking business, took leave of the world, and devoted himself and his personal fortune to spreading this new religion which the mysterious stranger was bringing him. It's like classic.
Yep. Happened with the Mormons, too.
Yeah. As it turns out, what the stranger caused Merswin to create was another branch of the Brotherhood network. The teachings of the Friends of God were deeply mystical and were divulged through a system of secret degrees and initiations. History records that illuminated mystics and other Illuminati were among Merswin's principal backers. The teachings of the Friends of God were not only mystical, they were also heavily apocalyptic. The Friends preached a powerful end-of-the-world message to gain converts. Merswin claimed to be the recipient of many supernatural revelations in which he was told that God had grown disgusted with the Pope and the Catholic Church. God was now placing his faith in people like Merswin to carry out his sacred plans. According to Merswin, God was planning to severely punish humanity in the near future because of mankind's increased corruption and sin. Merswin had the sacred duty of preaching the need for everyone to therefore become completely obedient to God. Merswin was not alone in spreading this dire message. Similar prophets also found their way into the Friends movement, bearing identical warnings. They all emphasized the need to unwaveringly obey God on the eve of the world's destruction. Merswin and his fellow doomsayers were certainly correct about one thing: the world was about to undergo a cataclysm because the Black Death was just getting started. So you can imagine how big of an effect that would have. They started preaching this, and then this plague shows up.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be very powerful.
As though someone knew.
Right.
You know,
this
they had
friend of God, this friend of God was giving Merswin some real information.
Yeah.
The Friends of God attracted a large following in Europe. Adherents were taught a 9-step program to become utterly and unquestioningly obedient to God. They were made to believe that this regimen would save them from the plague and resulting social devastation occurring around them. The first step of the program was a sincere confessional to restore health. A properly done confessional can have a highly beneficial effect on an individual, although a poorly done or unnecessary confessional can be damaging. The second step was a resolution by adherents to, quote, give up their own will and to submit to an illuminated friend of God who shall be their guide and counselor in the place of God, unquote. By the seventh step, a member had completely given up all self-will and had burned all bridges to become completely subservient to the Lord. By the final step, all personal desire was to be destroyed. The individual was to be crucified to the world and the world to them, enjoying only what God does and to wish for nothing else. These teachings were a program to make human beings obedient to an ultimate degree. Members were taught that obedience was a spiritual being's highest calling and something to be striven for as a quest. Merswin's conversion to his mysterious friend's religion was very damaging to him, as it no doubt was to many others. Merswin soon begins to suffer strong manic depressive symptoms, the phenomenon of alternately being in a happy state and then inexplicably experiencing mental depression back and forth. In Merswin, these symptoms became severe, and they were erroneously perceived by his followers as a sign of religious transformation. Many people today would recognize such symptoms as an indication that Merswin was connected to a repressive influence, in this case, the corrupted Brotherhood and probably his mysterious friend. During his life in the Friends movement, Merswin continued to claim many mystical experiences, including joint revelations with his friend. In one of those revelations, Merswin was told to use his money to buy an island in Strasbourg for use as a friend retreat. Strasbourg was Merswin's home city and is located by the southwestern French-German border. 5 years later, Merswin had another joint revelation in which he was told to turn the whole Friends operation over to an organization called the Order of St. John, which governed the Friend movement thereafter. So, footnote here, exactly what the Order of St. John was and where it came from is quite a mystery. It has been described in Albert Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry as a 17th century system of Freemasonry with a secret mission. Is the Order of St. John described by Mackey the same one which had taken over the Friends of God movement 3 centuries earlier in the 14th century? I do not know. But it's close, Knights of St. John, the Order of St. John. I mean, like, what's going on here? What is happening? The Friends of God religion was one of the many mystical movements that proliferated during the Plague Years. These movements were usually Christian in nature, but they advertised themselves as an alternative to the Catholic Church and attracted many disgruntled Catholics on that basis. This began to split apart the Christian world. Unfortunately, the split did not mean that Christians were returning to Jesus' maverick teachings. The new mystical religions only strengthened the emphasis on obedience and apocalypticism. This began to drive many people out of religion altogether and helped lay the foundation for the radical materialism which began to arise out of Germany shortly thereafter. The Friends of God and other mystical practices of the time became a juggernaut, which brought about one of the greatest challenges ever faced by the Catholic Church, the Protestant Reformation of Martin Luther. Luther began his famous ecclesiastical rebellion in the early 1500s, and by that time the Catholic Church had fallen into the hands of Pope Leo X, son of Lorenzo of the Medici family. Lorenzo was the head of a wealthy international banking house in Florence, in Italy. The Medici family had become involved with the papacy in a generation earlier when the Medicis financed an archbishop who later became the schismatic anti-pope, Pope John XXIII. Under John XXIII, the Medicis were awarded the task of collecting taxes and tithes that were due. The Medicis operated a far-flung network of collectors and sub-collectors to accomplish this undertaking. The fees earned from this operation helped make the Medici family one of the wealthiest and most influential banking houses in Europe. The involvement of profit-motivated bankers in church affairs transformed many spiritual activities of the Catholic Church into business enterprises. For example, Catholics believed in the importance of paying indulgences. An indulgence is money paid to compensate for sin. That sounds like a bad idea.
Yeah, that's a really bad idea.
We're all going to be broke. Hold on one second.
And yeah, I'd say the Medicis are... It's interesting because in the Assassin's Creed games, the Medicis are... You deal with them a lot. They are the bad influence in that game that takes over the church. And so... but he also, the head of the Medici family, was the guy who got the Hermetica translated and started the Renaissance. So It's weird. Yeah, they were all into mysticism. Remember I told the story of like he has this choice. What tomes do I want translated that came out of Egypt through Byzantium? Yes. And he chooses the Hermetica, and it like launches the Renaissance.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that was like one of the top Medici guys too. It might have been Lorenzo. Let's see. The involvement of profit-motivated bankers. Okay, yeah. So the indulgences. An indulgence is money paid to compensate for sin. When paid in conjunction with a properly done confessional, monetary penance can be effective in relieving guilt, especially if the money is used to assist the injured party. Most indulgences, however, went into church coffers. Medici collectors were more concerned with how much money a person could pay than whether or not the penitent achieved any spiritual benefit from paying it. Understandably, many Catholics grumbled, and their discontent helped pave the way for Martin Luther.
Well, what do you do if you don't have any money? You're just like, well, screw it. I can't pay. I'm just gonna sin all I want. I can't pay for it. Nothing I can do.
But think about it, if you had the idea that you could pay to cleanse yourself of some sin.
Yeah, it does not sound
you just go do what you want and then pay for it if you're really, really rich.
It's not good.
Right. History books tell us, let's see, wait. Here we go. Luther eventually found going to confessional difficult. So like Martin Luther was a Catholic, okay? And I'm skipping some of this stuff, but he was in there, and he was a Catholic priest, and he just kind of becomes disgruntled. Okay, so it says he found going to confessional difficult. He had already come to hate the angry and condemning God of the Catholic religion, and as a result, he began to lose his faith in the Catholic way to salvation. There was, however, another equally important reason why Luther was having difficulty in the confessional. He had committed acts which he felt unable or unwilling to confess. Luther claims that he tried to purge himself of every conceivable sin, but some acts still, quote-unquote, eluded his memory when it came time to divulge them to his confessor. I'm like, sure, guy. Yeah. Oh, I forgot about those sins while I was in the confessional. Sure. Whatever. He had done something that he felt so guilty for he couldn't even bring himself to say it in confessional, is what it sounds like.
Or he was doing, well, yeah. If the church found out he was doing it, they'd kill him or something.
Right,
you know?
yeah, or excommunicate him.
Yeah.
So Luther's key to reform would have been to reinforce the good tenets still alive in Catholicism while eliminating the blatant commercialization that the East Roman changes to Christian doctrine. But that was not the road Luther chose to take. He taught instead the false idea that a person has no personal control over his spiritual salvation. Luther convinced people that salvation is dependent entirely upon the grace of a monotheistic God. So you can see how that's a bad idea. Like, the idea that you have no control over your own spiritual salvation, it has nothing to do with what you do.
Yeah.
That's not that doesn't sound like a good idea to teach people.
Yeah, it seems like then you're just going to be not wanting to take responsibility
for,
which is not good.
Right. So he says there was only one action an individual could take to attain God's grace, according to Luther, and that was to believe in Jesus as Savior and to accept Christ's agony and crucifixion as penance for one's own sins. Luther's curious notion that Jesus' crucifixion can be the penance for other people's sin is partially based upon the concept of karma. Karma is the idea that all acts in this universe eventually come back at a person in the future. People frequently invoke the idea of karma when they ask, what did I do to deserve this? In modern science, karma has been expressed as, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. In monotheism, karma usually comes in the form of God's inevitable punishments for sin and rewards for good. On a personal level, the principle of karma seems to hold true in the sense that the world one creates, good or bad, through action or inaction, is ultimately the world that comes back to one. Poor ethics seemed to boomerang in the form of spiritual degradation. A major benefit of a properly done confessional is that it actually seems to break the negative boomerang effect, and it will thereby help start a person back to the road to spiritual recovery. Because Luther's confessionals were unsatisfactory to him, he felt compelled to invent another way to escape the karma cycle enforced by the rewards and punishments of his monotheistic God. Luther therefore developed the idea that God would allow Jesus' pain and suffering on the cross to become the boomerang for everyone. In other words, by believing in Jesus, you will not spiritually suffer for the bad things you have done in the past because Jesus has already suffered for you. This is a wonderfully magical notion, but it is hardly a philosophy of responsibility, nor is it fair to Jesus that he should be expected to take the brunt for everyone else's wrongs. Yeah, I didn't know this was part of the Reformation. I didn't know this was part of the Protestant Revolution.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Luther's ideas were clearly mystical. This is not surprising when we consider that Luther had been greatly influenced by some of the mystical religions which were so popular in his country. His primary mentor in the Augustinian order was Johann von Staupitz, who preached a theology containing many elements from the writings of the prominent German mystics Heinrich Suso and Johann Tauler. Tauler was one of the most widely read mystics of the 14th century, and he was associated with the Friends of God movement. So the Friends of God movement influences Martin Luther's new Protestant Reformation. That's so weird. This is why I couldn't skip all that stuff about the Friends of God movement, right? I'm like, no, I can't do that. Okay. So evidence of more direct connections of Luther to the Brotherhood network is found in Luther's personal seal, which consisted of his initials on either side of two Brotherhood symbols, the rose and the cross, which are the chief symbols of the Rosicrucian order.
Yeah.
Both during his life and after, Luther counted among his supporters important individuals and families who were active in the Illuminati and in Rosicrucianism. We need to take a break here?
Yeah.
All right.
And hopefully we don't lose power in the storm.
Right. It's thundering a lot outside. We're about to have a plague.
Amidst a pestilence. And hopefully we don't lose power and we can finish this episode tonight. That would be great. And also internet so that I can upload it so that you guys can get it tonight or in the morning. So let's get back into it. We're getting close here.
Yeah. And so we were talking with the Watcher in the break, and Hessian is what people call them, but Hesse is probably how they say it. But yeah. But I was right that I've heard this term Hesh before. Hessians.
Yeah, so probably
it's a westernized or whatever.
Yeah. Check the Homo Correctus thread tomorrow.
After this show.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay, so during his life and after, Luther counted among his supporters important individuals and families who were active in the Illuminati and in Rosicrucianism. One of them was Philip the Magnanimous, head of the powerful royal house of Hesse, whose descendants would later hold important leadership positions in Brotherhood organizations, especially in German Freemasonry, as we shall later see. As one of the prime leaders of the Reformation, Philip the Magnanimous founded the Protestant University of Marburg and organized political alliances against the Catholic German Emperor Charles V. After Luther's death, his religion was supported by Sir Francis Bacon, who was at one time the Lord Chancellor of England. Bacon was also the highest executive of the Rosicrucian order in Great Britain. One of Bacon's greatest contributions to the Reformation arose from his efforts as the coordinator of a project to create an authorized English Protestant Bible under his King James I. This Bible, known as the King James Version, was released in 1611 and became the most widely used Bible in the English-speaking Protestant world. So the King James Bible is a Protestant Bible from Richard Francis Bacon, who was a Rosicrucian.
6 ways to Sir Richard Francis Bacon.
Hey, you could definitely do that game.
That sounds about right. Just mix it all up in a blender.
Yeah. Too much bacon, said no one ever. Luther and his supporters created the single largest schism in Christian history. Enormous power was wrested from the Roman Catholic Church. The Protestant sects today account for 1/3 of all Christians worldwide and nearly half of all Christians in North America. The Catholic Church did not allow this to happen without a fight, however. The Catholics launched a counter-reformation in an unsuccessful attempt to squelch the Protestant heresies. Leading the counter-reformation was, interestingly, a new Brotherhood-style organization created just for this purpose, the Society of Jesus, better known as the Jesuits.
Oh, here we go. Hold on.
Time to crack open the beer because the Jesuits have shown up. And these guys pop up in the weirdest places throughout. I mean, dang it. Yeah.
Okay.
We've commented over the course of the show, like many episodes, about why is there a Jesuit in this story?
Oh, okay. I need to keep a lookout for this. Okay.
Yeah. The Jesuit order was founded in 1540 by a soldier turned cleric named Ignatius of Loyola. The Jesuits were a Catholic secret society with degrees of initiation, periods of probation, and many secret rituals. It was also militant. Jesuits were encouraged to adopt a soldierly spirit of loyalty to their quote-unquote captain, Jesus. Ignatius was chosen to be the first general of the order in April 1741. The image of Jesus as a quasi-military captain may seem rather humorous to anyone familiar with Jesus' teachings, but the image was helpful in making the Jesuit order an effective cadre for combating the Protestants. Although it is true that the Reformation led the human race further away from spiritual understanding, it did have one very beneficial effect. It broke the back of the Catholic Inquisition. So that is good. The Inquisition had been one of the most oppressive institutions to burden the human spirit. Inquisitors meddled in every human endeavor, from religion to the sciences and to the arts. The Inquisition enforced some of the most hopelessly antiquated scientific thought by threatening people with torture and death. It hindered the development of many of the fine arts, notably theater. It probably did not greatly matter what the Protestants taught. They would have still been able to bring enormous relief to Europe as long as they were able to reduce the power of the Inquisition. There was an eventual price to be paid for this benefit, however, and that was the price of an ever-deepening materialism. Philosophies of humanism, rationalism, and similar ideologies with a materialistic bent took on renewed vigor in the Reformation climate. Most importantly, many of the positive effects of the Reformation were offset by the fact that Protestantism was yet one more human faction placed in unresolvable conflict with other factions over erroneous religious issues. Luther himself contributed to this by hinting that the Pope represented the forces of the Antichrist. The result has been more war, this time between Catholics and Protestants, notably today in Ireland. Despite the Brotherhood Network's continued pattern of generating conflict during the centuries discussed in this chapter, it is important to note that a maverick influence had manifested itself in the Rosicrucian organization by the early 1600s. The Rosicrucian goal of individual spiritual recovery and some of its teachings were remarkably similar to some earlier maverick goals. Modern Rosicrucian literature from the United States continues to reflect some of this positive influence by attempting to propagate a more scientific view of spiritual phenomena and by teaching that humans can intelligently control their lives. Unfortunately, modern Rosicrucianism still contains many custodial elements which will prevent adherents from achieving full spiritual rehabilitation. Although Rosicrucians contributed to the success of the Reformation, they did not achieve much fame until the year 1614, when, as noted earlier, a lodge of German Rosicrucians began a phase of outward activity by mass-producing a leaflet announcing the presence of Rosicrucians in Hesse's largest principality, Hesse-Kassel. The pamphlet created a stir by urging all people to abandon their false teachers such as the Pope, and Galen, which was a popular ancient Greek physician, and Aristotle. The pamphlet also told the story of a fictitious character, Christian Rosicrucius, to symbolize the founding of the Rosicrucian order. So this Christian Rosicrucius,
R.C. Christian?
yeah, which was the alias given by the person who funded the building of the Georgia Guidestones.
That's right.
Which still piss a lot of people off today when they read, keep the population of the planet down to 500 million or less. And they think it's a depopulatory, but it's, to me, I'm like, they're telling this to people after a worldwide destruction. But yes, the whole Christian Rosicrucius, R.C. Christian Rosicrucian thing is weird.
Yeah. I have a feeling that Randall Carlson might be involved.
RC. That's right.
But we're not going to ask him because we don't even get to ask him our questions.
All right. Are these initials yours?
I mean, you do live in Georgia.
But then won't he just say, well, that is interesting?
Yeah. Well.
Well, I can't claim full credit.
Yeah.
We love you, Randall.
There was something else I was going to say about this. I lost it. Okay. Okay. I remember what it was. There's a book called Foucault's Pendulum. Mm-hmm. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong.
Sounds right.
Anybody interested in this kind of stuff should definitely get that book. It's fiction, but it's written by a guy who has studied this mystical stuff, and he's a professor. He's a historian or something, and like he just knows his stuff. And he does this. He starts out with this pamphlet being released, this Rosicrucian thing, and then the characters in the book dive into all this crazy mysticism that goes back for thousands of years, trying to find the secrets of the universe. And it's awesome. You should definitely get it.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Maybe there's a good audio version of it. I don't know. I've got the book itself, and it's interesting. I actually found that book on the shelf of some place we went to stay somewhere.
Really?
Yeah, we went to.
Was it the barn in Vermont?
No, this is a long time ago.
Oh.
We went somewhere, and it was a place, and they had a bookshelf, and I finished the book that I was reading that I brought with me, and I picked that one up off their library and started reading it, and I was like, this is really good. And then the owner told me I could take it, and I left the book that I had brought as a replacement in their library and took Foucault's Pendulum with me. And it's an awesome book.
That's a cool story.
Yeah, just found it randomly, and I was like, what is this pendulum thing? Started reading, and I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. Yeah, that's really good. Okay. The pamphlet is best known by its shortened name, the Fama Fraternitas, or Noted Fraternity, or Famous Brotherhood. The full title of the leaflet, translated to English, is Universal and General Reformation of the Whole Wide World, together with the Noted Fraternity of the Rosy Cross, inscribed to all the learned and rulers of Europe. It's classic. Despite the quaint, high-sounding tone, the leaflet's title reveals a deadly and serious intent to create broad, universal changes in human society. All right. Chapter 20. A new aristocracy.
I have to say, it is strange to think, who decides, like, I'm going to create a massive change in society?
Yeah.
And then sets out to achieve said goal. Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
and then there's books written about how to do this.
Yeah.
You can start riots, and you can do this, and you can do that. And
Yeah.
what?
You say you want a revolution. Well, we all want to change the world. All right? And I'm just like, do we? Do we really all want to change the world? I don't know. And I always think, I'm like, a revolution is a circle.
Yeah.
So
right.
all you people are like, what's revolution? Yeah, you're just going around and around and around and around.
That's right.
God.
Yeah.
Idiots!
Okay. Revolution is as old as history itself. That is how this chapter starts. People have been rebelling against gods and kings and parents for millennia, and so we hardly look at it as anything out of the ordinary. Luther's revolt was not a true revolution in the sense of blood being spilled. Luther and the Pope led no armies against one another. The Reformation did, however, lay the groundwork and provide the inspiration for numerous wars and violent political revolutions that were to sweep the globe for centuries to follow. One of the earliest political struggles to grow out of the Reformation was the 80 Years' War. God.
Yeah.
Which got fully underway by 1569. The 80 Years' War pitted Spain against that region of Europe we know today as the Netherlands, which was then under Spanish rule. A new Protestant sect known as Calvinism, the origins of which will be discussed later, had emerged by that time.
They kept changing the rules as they went, just making them up.
Yeah.
Calvinism.
Calvinism.
Don't ever go to war with those.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't join that religion. The rules are constantly changing.
That's right. You can't win.
Radical Calvinists from France had migrated to the Netherlands and created an activist Protestant community in Holland. This naturally caused friction between the devout Catholic rulers of Spain and the emerging Protestant minority of Holland. The Dutch minority not only sought religious freedom, but they soon craved political independence as well, and the result was nearly a century of war. Many of the early Dutch struggles against Spain were led by William I the Silent, a German ruler who reigned over the German Principality of Nassau, which bordered on Hesse, and over the French region of Orange. Hence, William's dynasty was known as the House of Nassau-Orange, or more simply, the House of Orange. William led the fight in Holland partly because he had inherited large tracts of land there. I don't want the land. God. The eventual success of the Dutch rebellions brought about the birth of a fully independent Netherlands. With independence came the establishment of a political and economic system that was to provide a model for revolutions in other countries. The Netherlands adopted a parliamentary form of government accompanied by a reduction of the monarch's power. Although the House of Orange became the Dutch royal family and remains so to this very day, the monarch's role in the new government was reduced to that of stadtholder, or chief magistrate. The stadtholder could not hold office unless approved by the National Assembly, or States General, although this is often a mere formality. One intended effect of the parliamentary system was to prevent any single individual from achieving too much power. So we might puzzle over why a German royal family of Nassau-Orange helped establish a political system in which their own power was reduced. It can be argued that they did so to encourage popular support for the revolt against Spain. After all, the House of Orange did gain permanent position in the government. But this does not fully solve the riddle because, as we shall see, other German royal families led coups and revolutions in which nearly identical political systems were erected, and few of those dynasties were acting entirely from noble impulses. A clue to resolving the puzzle is found in the fact that those German dynasties were deeply involved in Brotherhood organizations. As we shall see in upcoming chapters, the evidence indicates that the families were promoting a Brotherhood agenda from which the royals handsomely profited in other ways. In light of the role of the Brotherhood network in promoting revolution and reducing monarchies, it might appear at first glance that the Brotherhood was back to its true uncorrupted purpose of opposing custodial institutions. After all, the institution of monarchy is traceable back to the custodial gods of ancient Sumeria. According to Mesopotamian tablets, the custodial society was ruled in a unique fashion. At the top was a council or system of councils. Beneath the top councils were planetary subdivisions such as Earth. Each subdivision was ruled by individual custodians on a hereditary basis, but subject to the laws of the council. According to ancient Sumerians, the local hereditary custodial rulers were Earth's first kings, and these rulers naturally implanted their monarchical system on human society. I think he's talking here, but there is talks of like the Circle of 50, and these old,
yes,
Enki and Enlil were part of it. Anu was the head,
yes,
but he was off planet or in the sky, or however you put it, the Lord of the Sky. And there was this Council of 50, but Enlil ruled the earth, and Enki was just below him, and they instituted the whole thing of monarchy on Earth. And that's how they ran their governments. And the human king was usually some kind of appointed person.
Yeah. Well, minor correction. Enlil ruled the heavens.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Anu was the distant
Most
one.
High.
Yeah, the Most High. He was the distant one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enlil ruled the heavens, and Enki
was
ruled
Lord
the
of the
earth.
earth.
Lord
Yeah.
of the earth, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they brought kingship down from heaven.
Right. Kingship was brought down from heaven into Eridu.
Yeah.
So, the Sumerians, the custodial rulers were the Earth's first kings, and those rulers naturally implanted their monarchical system. We see intriguing evidence of this in those ancient Mesopotamian drawings that depict custodial gods bearing two objects which are now universal symbols of monarchy, the scepter and the tiara, or crown.
Yep.
The Sumerians state that the first human kings on Earth were the offspring of custodial rulers who mated with human women. These matings entitled the half-human offspring to become early monarchs on Earth, like Gilgamesh, right? Was supposed to be part god, wasn't he? Or 2/3 god. Yeah. So the
Blue bloods?
Right, yeah, that's where we're going here. Thus was born the idea of royal blood and the perceived importance of maintaining proper royal breeding to ensure continued purity of the human royal bloodline. Interestingly, some ancient custodial gods were depicted as either blue-skinned or blue-blooded. This gave us the idea, and some say reality, of royal blue bloods.
Why blue? What's with the color blue? I don't.
Well, I guess the idea would be that they're not human, so they have a different color blood or skin.
Okay.
And he's right. Some of these, you look at the Hindu gods and they got blue
They're
skin.
blue,
Yeah.
Okay.
Osiris is always pictured as being green.
Okay.
And some say, well, that's because he's dead. But, I'm like, okay. I mean, that color green is not a dead guy, right? Where was I at here? Okay, so this was born the idea of royal blood. Aristocratic breeding practices have persisted throughout history and remain important to some royalty even today. Human blue bloods appear to be the prize Hereford cows of Earth's livestock race, Homo sapiens.
Heifer?
Heifer, is that how you say it? H-E-R-E?
I mean, a heifer.
Yeah.
H-E-R-E-F-O-R-D is Hefford? Probably right. I don't even know.
I don't
It looks
know.
like Hereford.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I've just heard the term heifer.
Yeah. I
it's
think
definitely
that's
spelled differently.
Spelled H-E-F-F-E-R. But
Okay,
yeah, I don't know.
Maybe.
So yeah, that stuff about the blue bloods there, I mean, we have talked about that too. Like, is this
Remember Do It for Science? No.
what?
The breeding thing where it's their whole method of breeding was like
Oh yeah, yes.
a son, like the firstborn son is with the
stepsister
proper
from
married mother, to the father, and then that son is supposed to marry a daughter from a different mother with the same father.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were telling me about this the other day.
Yeah.
And supposedly that, and we talked about the genetics and how that works.
Yeah.
And there's a lot.
People use it in cattle breeding.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's a lot of animals in the animal kingdom that do this.
Yeah.
Like bees and
Yeah.
wasps and stuff. They do this on purpose.
Yeah.
I guess.
But then you
That's
end
how
up
they
getting
breed.
the rebellion, the forbidden love, no, I don't want to do it.
That's right.
I don't want to do it. And then
Yep.
they run off.
Yep.
That's where you get that story
Yep.
of the, star-crossed lovers
Yeah.
or whatever.
Romeo,
It's like,
Juliet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you're royalty and you fall in love with someone and it's true love.
Right. Yeah.
So basically,
But you
we
have
know
an arranged marriage since
That's
you were
right.
6 with some prince that you've never met or whatever.
Yes.
you two would definitely not be part of that. You guys would be like, I'm out.
I mean, it's hard to avoid in most cases.
Well, don't they? Some
Yeah,
of them
so
kill
the
themselves,
Watcher
don't they?
sums it up here. Maximum expression of male genetic characteristics while avoiding the recessive sex-linked disorders.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah,
that breeding...
that makes sense.
Breeding program is all about.
Yeah. So when we were talking about that, you were like, do it for science, folks. Somebody out there try it out.
Yeah, give it a shot. I mean, I guess the royals have been doing it for science for thousands of years already. But
Yeah.
I mean, like they trace their bloodlines back and back and back, and they're pointing to like, do I have the, like in Israel, it was like, were they descended from David? And,
Yeah.
and David was even descended from somebody further back. And,
Yeah.
he couldn't have become king except that he had the blood of, somehow he had the blood of somebody even farther back. And
Some patriarch or
right,
something, yeah.
and it goes all the way back and disappears into the mists of prehistory, but they've been doing this since the beginning.
Yeah.
Somebody has the whole tree
Right.
in one of these secret societies.
Yeah, they have these enormous trees, yes. Okay, so we're skipping quite a bit here, and we're getting into chapter 26 now, the account of Saint Germain. This is a weird chapter. So a controversial figure in the intrigues of 18th century Europe was a secretive and colorful individual known as the Count of Saint Germain. Saint Germain's life has been the subject of many articles in at least one book ever since his reported death in 1784. There has been a tendency to either deify him or dismiss him as an unimportant charlatan. Neither characterization seems to accurately reflect what he truly was. Saint Germain's activities are important because his movements provide a fascinating link between the wars going on in Europe, the deeper levels of the Brotherhood, and the clique of German princes, particularly the House of Hesse. The first of many mysteries concerning Saint Germain is the circumstance of his birth. So here we go. We start out with, like, who is he really? Right? Many researchers believe him to have been the offspring of Francis II, the ruler of the once powerful Principality of Transylvania. Transylvania, famous in cinema as the home of the mythical human vampire, Dracula, and other assorted literary ne'er-do-wells, has ties to the dynasty in Hesse. Francis II of Transylvania had married 16-year-old Charlotte Amalie of Hessen-Rheinfels on September 25th, 1694, at the Cathedral of Cologne in Germany. Out of this union came two known children. However, when the will of Francis II was published in 1737, a third unnamed son was mentioned as a beneficiary. This third child proved to be Leopold George, eldest son and heir to the Transylvanian throne. George was born in either 1691 or 1696, depending on which theory of his birth one accepts. Because of the uncertainty of his birth date, it is not known if he was the son of Charlotte of Hesse or of Francis II's prior wife. What does appear certain is that Leopold George's early death in 1700 had been staged to save him from the deadly intrigues which were about to destroy the Transylvanian dynasty and end the independence of Transylvania. So Leopold George is believed to have been the Count of Saint Germain.
Okay.
Saint Germain first appears in European society in 1743. So we got to keep track of these dates, right? 1743.
Do I need to be writing these things
No,
down?
I'm just saying keep them in mind to sort of like
Real quick, you were right about the Hereford. Hereford.
Okay.
A heifer is any adult female cow that has not
Okay.
Calveda
Calved.
given a calf. I'm assuming.
Calveda?
Thank you, Watcher.
He says it twice. Calveda. Thanks, Watcher. Yeah, Hereford. Is that how you say it? Hereford?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hereford, I guess.
Autocorrect is ruining his life. Yeah, get a laptop. You're typing on your phone. It's hard. Okay. So yeah, this guy, they're saying that Leopold George may have been born in 1691. So if he appears in European society in 1743, he's already almost 50.
Yeah.
Right. So he would have been a man in his 40s. Little is known about his life before that year. A dossier on the mysterious count has been created by order of French Emperor Napoleon III, but unfortunately, all of the documents were destroyed in a fire that engulfed the house in which it was stored. This resulted in the loss of irreplaceable information about Saint Germain, and his own secretiveness only deepens the mystery about his life. The surviving information indicates that Saint Germain was raised to become one of the most active and colorful and successful secret political agents of the Brotherhood in the 18th century. Of Saint Germain's early life, strict observance leader Prince Karl of Hesse wrote that Saint Germain had been raised in childhood by the last of the powerful Medici family. So here we go.
Oh, here we go.
Of Italy. The Duke of Medici, like some earlier Medicis, was engrossed in the mystical philosophies prevalent in Italy at the time, which may account for Saint Germain's deep involvement in the Brotherhood network as an adult. While under Medici care, Saint Germain is believed to have studied at the university in Siena. His first documented appearance in European society occurred in England in 1743. At that time, the Jacobite cause was very strong, and the 1745 invasion of Scotland was only 2 years away. During those 2 crucial years prior to the invasion, Saint Germain resided in London. Only glimpses of his activities during that time are available. Saint Germain was a gifted musician, and several of his musical compositions were publicly performed in the Little Haymarket Theatre in early February of 1745. He also had several of his trios published by the Walsh Company in London. British authorities did not believe that Saint-Germain was in London to pursue a musical career, however. In December of 1745, with the Jacobite invasion underway, Saint-Germain was arrested by the British on suspicion of being an agent. He was released when rumored letters from Charles Edward, the leader of the Stuart invasion, were not found on his person. This was wrote of his arrest afterwards. Quote, "The other day they seized an odd man who goes by the name of Count Saint-Germain. He has been here for these 2 years, will not tell who he is or whence, but professes two very wonderful things. The first, that he does not go by his right name, and second, that he never had any dealings or desired to have any dealings with any woman. He sings, plays on the violin wonderfully, composes, is mad, and not very sensible." Just like in the end, they're just, he's mad. Right. But yeah, they're saying he fully admits that he doesn't use his right name, and he's crazy.
The invasion of Scotland that you just talked about, are we around the same time as the Stone of Destiny? And
Yeah, all that stuff's in this. I mean, like that. I mean, that thing is old though. The Stone of Destiny.
I don't know the dates.
Those
on
are
that.
weird, but those are very old, very
Okay.
old artifacts. I don't know where they came from. So after his release, Saint-Germain departed England and spent 1 year as the guest of Prince Ferdinand von Lobkowitz, first minister of the Austrian emperor. The War of Austrian Succession was still raging at the time, in which Austria and England were allied against France and Prussia. It's so hard to keep track of all this stuff.
Yeah.
During this visit to Austria, Saint-Germain was introduced to the French Minister of War, the Marshal de Belle-Isle. I'm not sure how to say this, but it sounds suspiciously like Belial, which is the name of a demon, right?
Oh, like Beetlejuice?
But they spell it's Marshal de, and then Bell as in Belle dash Isle as in island, Isle, right?
Yeah.
But if you just say it together, Belial, I mean, like, who is this guy? But I don't know how to say it. It's maybe a French. Anyway, so this guy in turn introduced Saint-Germain to the French court. So this is an intriguing sequence of events. Here we have a man arrested as a suspected enemy of England during a time of war, who then immediately went to stay with the top minister of a nation, Austria, which was allied to England. And during that stay, this same man befriended the minister of war of a nation, France, which was the enemy of Austria. Saint-Germain's political contacts on all sides of a raging war were remarkable. So he does this throughout his known movements. Like obviously there's whole periods where he just vanishes.
Yeah.
But he would show up in some country and then he would immediately be taken in by all the top, the highest royals or whatever, he'd be in their court. And then he would suddenly leave and go hang out with their like sworn enemies. And then those people would introduce him to like other sworn enemies of them. And he's just moving around in these.
He's a charmer.
It's so strange.
That is really weird.
So what Saint-Germain did for the next 3 years after leaving Austria is not certain. Saint-Germain reappeared in European society again in 1749, this time as a guest of King Louis XV of France. France, a Catholic nation, actively supported the Jacobite cause against the Hanoverians of England, right? So now he's on the other side of this whole thing. France was also involved in many other foreign intrigues, according to a lady of the French court who later wrote of Saint-Germain in her memoirs. Quote, "From 1749, the king, Louis XV, employed him, Saint-Germain, on diplomatic missions, and he acquitted himself honorably in them." Unquote. King Louis had gained fame as an architect of the 18th century secret diplomacy. The acceptance of Saint-Germain into the French court and his work for the French king as a political agent is significant for several reasons. First, it points to the important role that Brotherhood members have played in the creation and operation of national and international intelligence networks throughout history, a matter we will consider in more detail later.
Yeah.
Secondly, as a Catholic, King Louis XV adhered to papal decrees, and the papacy was hostile to Freemasonry. Indeed, Roman Catholicism and Freemasonry are both factions with origins in the Brotherhood, which have long opposed one another. In 1737, Louis XV issued an edict forbidding all French subjects to have anything to do with Freemasonry, and during the ensuing decades, the French government actively repressed the French Freemasons with police raids and imprisonment. Louis XV's edict of 1737 was followed a year later by Pope Clement papal bull which forbade Catholics everywhere from participating in or supporting Freemasonry under penalty of excommunication. Yet here was the Count of Saint Germain, who would later reveal a lifelong involvement in the Brotherhood, residing as a guest of the king. The likely explanation based upon the known facts of Saint Germain's life is that he was not so much a Freemason as he was an agent of the higher Brotherhood, and it is also unlikely that the French king understood Saint Germain's role in the Brotherhood network.
Wow.
Man, whether you agree with everything he's saying in this book or not, what a massive amount of stuff he has dug up.
Yes.
And this research is just like the history in here that it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, the Comte de Saint Germain has long been, to me, just a one. I'm confused by this guy. He's just such a strange person, and you just don't, and like
He's bouncing back and forth.
Bramley's idea of like he's actually part of some larger network, and that's why he just
facilitating all the wars.
he can just appear in the middle of all these different countries who are at war with each other. For like normally, if you're hanging out in England and you're hanging out with the aristocracy, and you do that for 2 years, and then you leave England and you show up somewhere in a place where they're at war with England, and you show up they're going to arrest you because you just spent 2 years in a country that they're at war with.
Yeah, you'd be an asset.
Unless you know the magic words.
Right, unless you are actually a facilitator for something else.
Yeah.
And the aristocracy.
And how do you just show up somewhere and like all of a sudden you're hanging out with the king?
Well, you have a UFO.
Aliens.
I mean, you guys want answers? I got answers. Making them up.
Well, I think that was a good. We got through quite a bit.
Yeah, you did a great job.
So maybe the next episode will be the final part, I think. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that.
I did.
I did.
You guys can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. And I would say the emails, just keep sending them. And I also want to apologize to anybody whose email I read on the last show. Because after listening to it, I feel like I was sick and I maybe did a substandard job of, I'm normally better at reading the emails.
See, look at that love.
I listened to it and I'm like, okay, I read them, but I feel like I wasn't totally up to par on being able to read them and do them justice. So sorry about that.
I think everybody understands.
That's
You showed up.
I know.
I was
Jeez,
here.
You showed up. I was impressed by that.
Oh, also for those of you in the Discord who were giving me crap because people were like, yeah, in the beginning of the show, you said you were just going to STFU and let Laura and Kyle talk. And then the next segment comes up with Chris, and you're just talking the whole time. I'm like, yeah, but okay, you guys don't understand that we're time traveling. We actually recorded that before I said I was going to STFU,
Yes.
and after I said I was going to STFU, I actually did stop talking, and they did. So
That's correct.
The beginning of the show was the second part of the show that we recorded, and I actually was getting tired of talking already.
Yeah,
because I had basically done the interview with Chris, and then we did the show, and I did the emails and reading, and I was just like, okay, I'm done. And then after that, it was mostly Kyle asking questions of Brendan. So I did do what I said, you guys in the Discord. You just don't understand time travel.
That's right.
All right. So you can check out the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. Check out the Encyclopedia, the glossary, and the SnakeSkins, which is our merchandise store. And I know we keep saying this, but we are going to be adding new stuff to the store. People have been sending us stuff, especially Laura C. has sent us the great Snake Force graphic. We're going to get a t-shirt made of that. Join the Pyramid Scheme. Help us get straight to Pyramid by donating to the show through Patreon or through PayPal. And thanks so much to everybody who is doing that.
Yes.
We really appreciate it, you guys. Something we never expected when we started this show is that people would be sending us money. So it's amazing when it happens. Thank you so much.
It's true.
Give us reviews wherever you can, but especially on Apple Podcasts. That's the best place to give us reviews. And thanks so much to all of you who have. Share the shows however you can. Follow us on Twitter at Snake Bros with no vowels, SNKBRS. Join the Facebook group, which was started by Jordan and is now run by History Shift. Also, check out the Discord. We really recommend this. This is really becoming the place where the Snake Force is congregating. So I really recommend joining the Discord, and you can find links to do that on the website. If you go to the website, there's a place on the menu that says Discord chat. Click on that, and you'll see a widget that has a connect button. So Join up. Also, the Library of the Serpent, which is run by Jeff and maintained by him. He also runs and maintains the Discord. So thanks very much to him. But the library has all kinds of books that are in the public domain about stuff we talk about on the show, and then links to places where you can buy books that aren't in the public domain. So it's a great resource, and there's also a link to that on the website. Thanks to History Shift, who not only now runs the Facebook group, but also is an admin in the Discord and also makes all of our YouTube videos. The value for value model is working great with him.
Yes.
So yeah, follow him on YouTube and on Twitter, guys. If you follow him on Twitter, you will always get notified of a new Brothers of the Serpent video on YouTube. And he also makes his own, and he has his own YouTube channel. So check him out. Also, Pod Doodles. He takes some of our podcast audio and turns it into like videos where you can watch him drawing while he's listening to the show. It's really cool.
I watched one of those for the first time, and it was good.
It's cool, right?
Yeah, it's like a ride. You know, you don't know what's coming, but it's good.
Yeah, yeah. And also, you know, like just when he's done and he backs out and you can see the whole thing, that's also really cool. The finished product is always really great. But while you're watching, he's zoomed in. So you're just seeing that part that he's drawing on. And then he'll move the screen and draws over here and then moves it more and draws over here. And at the end of the show, it backs out and you see the whole thing. You're like, wow,
dude, that's
the whole
cool.
show.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So don't forget about Cosmographia, which is the podcast we do with Randall Carlson and Brad and Normal Guy. And we also have a subreddit, r/Brothers of the Serpent. So go there and give us updates if you like Reddit. It's a good place to go. I do love Reddit, and I might actually be in there, and you guys will never know which one I am.
Oh.
You just don't know which one of those people in there is me.
Oh.
Because my username is totally not related to anything we do on this show.
Sir Francis Snaken.
And thanks, as always, to Where Did the Road Go, Uncharted X, Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape, The C Word, Grimerica, Conspiranormal, The Cosmic Tusk, Dabbler's Den, and the 7 Ages Audio Journal.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much. And all of you listeners, this is our favorite time of the week. And it's also, don't forget, Kyle and Laura's anniversary, and it's crazy.
Woo!
Yeah.
And there's a storm coming, so we got to finish the podcast so we don't lose the whole thing. So,
We love you.
always have.
Yeah.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work. Snakes.